Where are we here? Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Albany City Council meeting for April 16th, 2018. Please join Councilmember Moss in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Someday.
May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Barnes?
Here.
Councilmember Moss?
Here.
Councilmember Pilch?
Present.
Vice Mayor Nason?
Here.
Mayor McQuay?
Here. We have one item under ceremonial matters. The cross on Albany Hill continued to be lit through last Friday. And I want to reiterate that neither the City Council nor the City of Albany endorses in any way the lighting of the cross for any occasion, religious or nationalistic, or supports its continued presence on public property. The Lions Club filed suit in federal court on September 11th against the City of Albany and several employees and council members individually. This civil action seeks damages and injunctive relief for deprivation of due process, equal protection, interference with the right of free speech, and interference with the free exercise of religion. The city is responding to the Lions Club's claims through the judicial process. We appreciate the input and support received to date from the public and encourage you to continue to respectfully share your concerns with the Lions Club as well as the City Council. Report on action taken in closed session.
The City Council met in closed session prior to the public meeting to discuss a proposed settlement in the case of Raphael versus City of Albany. The council unanimously approved a settlement of that personal injury action. The city's portion of the settlement is $30,000, $7,000 of which will be paid through the city's risk management authority.
Thank you. Consent calendar. Consent calendar items are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. By approval of the consent calendar, the staff recommendations will be adopted unless otherwise modified by the City Council. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or member of the audience requests removal of the items from the consent calendar. Does any council member wish to pull an item?
Yes, 5.1 and 5.6.
512 for me.
I'm sorry, Nick, what?
512.
12? Any others?
And I have a member of the public
Okay.
pulling 5.8.
Okay. Let's start with 5.1.
This is the minutes. We need to correct one section. There's a sentence that says, Vice Mayor Nason requested the Parks and Recreation Commission consider establishing a dog park in Memorial Park, planting a hedge around the dog park, and developing plans for Memorial Park in its entirety. That is not a correct characterization, and I've written up an alternative which says Vice Mayor Nason asked whether the Parks and Recreation Commission will be looking at the current site in Memorial Park as a dog park or only at alternative locations. Shelley Putzer said the commission may examine the current site. Vice Mayor Nason commented that staff might examine the use of hedges as a way of mitigating park noise impacts, and that planning for the freeway right-of-way, which is presently unzoned land, should be undertaken rather than using the area as a potential location for desired projects without any plan. So I've written that up. So
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And 5.6.
this is the Memorial Park bathroom renovations. And I will be voting for this, but wanted to ask a few questions. And one is, I'm wondering about the status of the whole area. There are several issues that seem potentially interrelated. And one question that I had was why there are 2 sets of bathrooms. And so far, we don't have an answer to that, correct?
Right. The second set of bathrooms, which are much smaller, are ingrained in the snack shack, so to speak, that is operated by the Albany Little League. So they aren't necessarily open during regular park hours, only when the field is in use by Little League.
And do they maintain them if there's a plumbing issue with those bathrooms?
Yes, they maintain that facility.
They maintain everything. Interesting, okay. I'd like to get the background on that when you can.
Sure.
Also, there's a bottle filler on the snack shack, and you're putting in a second bottle filler, again, just a few feet away. We're going to have 2 sets of bathrooms and 2 bottle fillers just practically next door, within a few feet from each other. And I think it might not be a bad idea to look into what, kind of planning quirk has created this sort of waste of space and resources. The most recent project that was done there, the door and patio for the Friendship Club, appears not to have been installed correctly. The gutter above the patio has broken, and the drainage, apparently it was not designed properly for drainage to run off of the concrete. There was a big pool there this morning after the rains. Somebody put a yellow cone or an orange cone out there to let people know that there was a big pool, but I think it needs to be looked at. That the drainage for the patio needs to be corrected, and the broken gutter needs to be fixed. And those are the main ones. There are others, but we should. I think it's important that we develop some kind of plan for that portion of Memorial Park. Basically, the entire eastern edge, if not the entire park. So now I am saying one of the things that was said in the minutes from last time. It's good to have some idea of what we want the parks to look like over time. And with that said, I'll vote for the project.
Okay, and 5-8, that was from the public, am I correct? Would you like to come up and make your statement?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brian Parsley, Albany resident. I just happened to see that the Codornices Creek project is back on the agenda again. I just want to, I have some concerns about this project as it moves forward, especially in relation to the location, obviously closest to the Little League fields. I know this is just a preliminary going into a contract with the Restoration Design Group, but this issue is much larger. The JPA is problematic at best. I think I've had conversations with a few council members about the city of Berkeley's just abandoning this project. They have not only just completely left their portion of this to the wind. I believe they're actually hurting the environment by their inaction. They've allowed trash, garbage, homeless encampments, feces, urine, drug paraphernalia, all on their side of the creek and refuse to come out and help. They've given lip service to this council, to the university, and still continue to refuse to do any work. I don't know, frankly, if many of you have been down there lately, but there is no interpretive center at 6th Street. There is an area where many people, some homeless, some living at transitional housing, go to drink and smoke. That is the interpretive center. I think that as we move forward with this, that the council needs to use all the influence it has with our big brother at the city of Berkeley, and essentially say, if you're not willing to do this, we have to take a stand and not move forward with this. They need to do their part, as we have done ours. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have 512, Nick?
Oh, yes, thank you. Just a comment on this one, and this is also going to be mentioned in the report by the mayor later, but I was happy to see this letter of opposition on our agenda. It's this, as far as I understand, this ballot measure would make all taxes be subject to 2/3 votes and would be very detrimental to cities in that way. And so everyone should be aware that this very, I think, nasty ballot measure is coming down the pike. So thanks for the letter of opposition, Mayor. That's it.
Oh, sure. Okay, after all that, can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
I'll second.
Poll the council, please.
Councilmember Barnes,
Gone?
Councilmember Moss,
Yes.
Councilmember Pilch,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nason,
Yes.
Mayor McQuaid.
Yes, and the motion carries. All right, good of the city. Good of the city is a time for persons desiring to address the city council on an item that is not on the agenda. Please note, city policy limits each speaker to 3 minutes. The Brown Act limits the council's ability to take and/or discuss items that are not on the agenda. Therefore, such items are normally referred to staff for comment or to a future agenda item, to a future agenda. All right, do we have, besides Mr. Tracy, who seems to have brought a show and tell tonight,
Mayor and Council,
turn it directly.
this is a reminder of April 21st. This Saturday for Earth Day, we're going to have a dual event out on the waterfront. First event is the usual beach cleanup, and the second event is visualizing sea rise. And I happen to have here a preliminary of the world-famous painter John Worley. This is his sea rise painting that he did of Columbus, basically, down. Turn it up. Good. Anyway, this, I guess that's not working. So this is John Worley's painting of sea rise, his whimsical depiction. But the point being that we have a very serious problem with the amount of change that's going to happen in our shoreline and the kinds of consequences that will happen because of intrusion of seawater, not only here, but around the country. And so when they talk about $1 billion to fix the damage to Houston, and they talk about how much money it's going to cost us to deal with our issues, we have, this is Susan Schwartz, Friends of Five Creeks, who's at my property here. This is what we expect will happen in the city of Albany on our shoreline with 2-meter sea rise at king tide. This is what happens to Buchanan. So we're going to lose, we will lose access to all bridges that go across the bay, all the bridges that go across the bay, miles of freeway, the entire Coliseum neighborhood. I'll show people who haven't seen it. So come on down on the 21st. The lead scientist for the San Francisco Estuary Institute will be there. Our mayor, Megan McQuaid, is graciously going to honor and to thank people for coming down for the event. And there'll be serious people talking about serious science and what we can expect, and actually what we can do to help protect ourselves and to protect our shoreline. So April 21st, 9 a.m. for beach cleanup, and 11 o'clock for the visualizing the sea rise. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have Kirk Schumacher and Alan Maris.
Hi, I'm Kirk Schumacher. I'm a Albany property owner for the last 45 years. And I was here at your last meeting talking about the rental situation, and I just wanted to follow up with some comments about the housing situation in Albany. It seems as though it's kind of like the situation where you have 5 blind men looking at an elephant and each one having their own description of exactly what it looks like. So at the last meeting, we heard one tenant say, I'm not going to fund my landlord's retirement. But I've heard landlords say, since I bought this building, I've been working nights paying bills and doing paperwork. I've been working weekends doing landscaping and picking up litter. I've been doing maintenance and repairs and preparation of vacant units on my vacations. And yes, by God, the tenants are going to pay for my retirement. That's why I've been working this second job. Builders say that fees and restrictions are too onerous. Tenants say fair market rents are going up faster than they want to pay. Landlords, myself included, say there's no appropriate basis for rent other than what the fair market value is. Some real estate brokers and some landlords say we need more construction because there's an imbalance between supply and demand. And each of these constituencies seems to be looking to you folks on the council to solve their problem, to take care of fixing things. But I think it's useful to take a step back and look at sort of the entire elephant, which is admittedly beyond the immediate jurisdiction of this city council. But I think about this. When I was born, there were 10 million people in California. There are now 40 million people in California. What do we look forward to in the lifetime of our children or grandchildren? Do we want to see the population quadruple again? Would we be happy to see 160 million people in California before the turn of the century? I mean, is that what we want for the future? When I was born, there were about 5 million housing units in California. There are now probably about 20 million. Has building all this additional housing brought us to a situation where housing is now affordable? Does building more housing make things more affordable? And more importantly, as the population has quadrupled, we still only have one Yosemite Valley. We don't have any more rivers for whitewater rafting than we did 70 years ago. There's only one Napa Valley. There's only one Monterey Bay, one Stinson Beach. So what is the future going to look like, and what is creating more housing in Albany or anywhere in the Bay Area or California really going to do to solve any of our problems? Thank you.
Thank you.
Alan Harris, Albany resident. So that's a pretty good nexus for my comment. I want to thank you for sponsoring, I guess, an affordable housing report from the Satellite Affordable Housing Group. We talked, as this gentleman said, quite a bit about it at the last meeting. And I'm looking forward, I want to thank you for that. And I'm looking forward to seeing the report. I think the kind of affordable additional housing we're looking at is much smaller and more cost effective, hopefully, than the housing that we've been putting in over the last 40 years, I guess. And that we have to look at a new way of providing housing for our community. So I look forward to seeing the report as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it? Anyone else for good of the city? Okay. Council member reports on meetings attended, announcements of future meetings, city manager report and comments. Anyone on council have anything to report?
Sure. This is going to be a bit from memory, but I did attend the PPC meeting, which stands for plans,
Programs and plans.
programs, projects, and something of the Alameda County Transportation Commission. That was good. There's some good stuff presented there. I'm looking for, well, anyway, it's worthwhile going to look at that agenda. But the most important thing I think that to take away from that meeting is that there's some, quite a number of the cities and agencies have not been using their funds, their transit funds, including Albany. We have a balance of 700 and something thousand, I think, of unspent funds. ACTC has quite a balance. BART has zero balance. BART's been spending all their money. It's probably a good thing. But there was some talk about how we, the transit agent, how the ACTC can help cities spend their funds and not just rack up balances. And there was some thought that for some cities it's probably they're waiting to get to a certain balance so they can do a certain project. I said that in Albany we probably are somewhat backlogged by just not being able to do every single project we want to. It just takes a lot of staff time and person power to implement these projects. But there was some talk about, well, should there be a sunset? Should there be a time after which the cities actually lose that money? So that was a little scary to hear. But anyway, there's just the, I framed it back to the commission that, I hope ACTCs could step up and help the cities by maybe providing staff or staffing projects and, help us spend the money by providing that staff support. So I hope they heard that. The other thing I went to was the at the high school, the venture.
Oh, good.
Yeah, the venture party for these students who go through the business program there. Lots of interesting ideas from the students, and a number of us were there. And then finally, this past Thursday, I was at the League of California Cities meeting, and the mayor has a report about that. And I think one of the things that I'll tag on to on the report is that the league said the city should be getting their projects ready for the SB1 funds, which we are. So we had that on the agenda today, so that's good. We need to spend that SB1 money as fast as we can to show that that it's needed. And then, well, actually, can you come back to me? I'll get my notes together for the League of Cities and finish up later.
Could we perhaps get a report at a future meeting on these transit funds? That'd be great.
Nick, is it transit funds or transportation funds?
Sorry, transportation funds,
Okay.
yeah. It's from all sources, Measure B, Measure BB, and whatever other funding there is, yeah.
It's also probably a refresher of what's in the CIP that you previously adopted recently. The funding sources are planned out as the projects begin implementation.
Rochelle, do you have anything
No.
besides your vacation you want to talk
In the
to us about?
vacation mode.
Do that, Michael?
Are you going to talk about the Oracle meeting we went to?
You can do it.
What's the name of the acronym for the agency again?
East Bay ID. That's why I had you do it.
Anyway, we went to a meeting.
We had a good time.
It was more of a party, as you can tell.
It was a legislative reception.
The wine was free. And
Coke wasn't.
it was at the Stella Artois Lounge in Oracle Stadium where the Warriors play, where the wine was free, but the Stella Artois was $14. It was one of those schmooze fests. I think it was interesting to get a sense for what the economic development community and the businesses are in Alameda County that want to work and interact with local governments. And they had lots of awards for all the local government officials, none of whom showed up, but their staffers did to get the awards. And I think that must have been pre-planned. So it was interesting in sort of an institutional way, but nothing profound or earth-shattering. I think the most interesting thing really is if you're on BART down by the Coliseum is to see how much transit-oriented development they're doing down there. It's pretty impressive. So I think that's the good news.
Did you?
I have nothing to contribute tonight, so.
Okay, I attended the mayor's conference, the Chamber Solano Avenue Association mixer. Nick and I were at the East Bay Municipal Utility District briefing with Andy Katz. I went to the Everyone Home community meeting, did the Climate Mayor's conference call, and went to the Alta Bates Task Force meeting. And as Nick mentioned, he and I were both on different days were at the League of California City Policy Committees. I was there on Friday. I did this morning write a written report. I'm not going to read it all. It's also in the back if the public's interested. We talked about a lot of the upcoming legislation, things that we were supporting, things that we're opposing, mainly on transportation, housing, land use, those type of things. I'm on the public safety policy, and we talked about, again, about legislation and issues related to law enforcement, fire and life safety, emergency communication, emergency services, that kind of thing. We also talked a little bit about implementing policies for the use of drones, kind of interesting. And we did have a brief presentation from the Bureau of Cannabis Control. So there's more information in the back if you're interested.
There's really a new government agency called the Bureau of Cannabis Control, BCC.
And
Okay.
just to finish that up, I'm on the League Environmental Quality Policy Committee. We talked about the issue where China has shut off the market, stopped accepting recyclables from us, and we don't have any local markets particularly for paper, or not enough local markets for paper and plastic recyclables, and so some cities are worried that they won't meet their 50% diversion goals because of this. So there was a lot of talk about the state needing to step up and to help incentivize the creation of markets in California for the recyclables. Let's recycle it here. Let's make sure we can recycle it here. We talked about cap and trade priorities for those funding sources, and nothing much changes except that we added a line item for fire and disaster relief policy, and then we discussed other fire response and disaster relief policies due mostly to the extraordinary wildfires we've had in this past season, in particular the ones, the North Bay ones affecting us the most here. But the League is supporting policies and legislation that'll help local cities deal with these disasters. And I think that's it of note.
Okay. Is there a city manager report?
Quick update on a couple of events and opportunities. The Albany Sculpture Loan Program is now accepting applications up until June 1st for installations along the Ohlone Greenway. Applications can be found on our city's website. Also, April 22nd from 10 to 1 at the Community Center is a Camp Expo. So for those of you who are looking to find places for your children this summer, check it out. You get a 10% off your camp opportunities. Also, a reminder of our next Copy with a Cop event, which will be April 24th, Tuesday, 8 a.m. at Hal's Coffee. It's a great opportunity to get to know your local police officers.
Thank you. Okay, and that brings us to new business. AC Transmit Encroachment Permit for Bus Stop Relocation at the intersection of San Pablo Avenue and Solano Avenue, and Solano Avenue and Keynes Avenue. May I have a staff report, please?
Yes, good evening. Before you tonight is an encroachment permit request from AC Transit for a proposed bus stop relocation at San Pablo and Solano Avenues. For your review this evening, we're going to have two presentations, which we'll try and keep somewhat brief. My presentation is going to focus on curb management and the parking associated with this request and the parking changes that if directed to approve the permit, would go into place. Representative from AC Transit is here then to explain the technical issues with the bus service and why this encroachment permit is being requested. So AC Transit filed the encroachment permit request for the following. The 72 route would be proposed to stop adjacent to 865 San Pablo, so that would be the north side of San Pablo, just north of Solano, on the east side of the street. The 18 and G buses would be proposed to stop on Lower Solano at Canes, approximately 1116 Solano Avenue. Right now, I'm sure we're all familiar with this. There's an existing bus shelter location that serves all three of those routes at the southeast corner of San Pablo at Solano. Just to give you a little bit of background, many of the buses which serve the stop at the intersection of Solano and San Pablo block the northbound right lane, which can often cause traffic congestion that extends to Buchanan Street, particularly at the peak hour in the afternoon. In some instances, vehicles may miss an entire signal cycle when the bus blocks the lane. And I'm sure we've all seen this before. This is typically what that vehicle backup looks like just outside of this building. Even with the light changing, there is a pretty significant backup down to this area. So with the proposed changes, the 72 stop would be relocated to that northeast side of the intersection on San Pablo at Solano. The existing shelter, which is located on the southeast side, would be removed altogether. And as part of this request, a new shelter is not proposed at the new location. So it would simply be signage there noting the bus stop, but not actual seating facilities or a shelter of any sort. Oops. This is the proposed red zone. It would extend from the corner north. To give you some context as far as businesses go, Avalon Glassworks is here. This is Closet Karma, and then this is Max's Liquors. So this is where the red zone would be proposed to go with this permit request. And in front of that, we have proposed converting that existing curb area to a green zone. As we understand it, that green zone is pretty heavily utilized. So we would be just moving that north of the bus stop, still providing for approximately 3 green spaces. And then this is just a composite of what that zone would look like together. You would have the red zone and then the green zone in front of it. South of the intersection where the bus stop is currently located, we have indicated putting a green zone there. That's not set in stone. As a city, we control what type of parking and time management we want there. So whether it's a green zone or a 90-minute zone, that's a decision that could be made. But ultimately, the goal is to convert this to timed on-street parking. And we think that this would create approximately 2 spaces in this existing location. So for the second bus stop, new location would be on the south side of Solano at Canes. This would provide for the 18 and the G on the same block. There is currently a stop just on the north side, approximately opposite this, and I'll show that in the next graphic. But to be clear, this would eliminate 4 on-street parking spaces with the potential creation for a parklet bus stop as part of a future application. And so this is the white box here denotes the existing westbound stop on the north side of the street. And here on the south side is where the new bus stop would go. So you'd have basically the same 2 lines with infrastructure on the same block. And just to give you a street view, this is the new bus stop location. So there is a parallel space here and 3 diagonal spaces that would come out. So that composes the 4 on-street spaces that would be lost. And here is to give you an idea of the length of the red curb. And then here looking westbound. So altogether, there would be 4 parking spaces that would be lost on Solano Avenue. With respect to San Pablo Avenue, as noted before, there would be 2 parking spaces that would be restored on the south side of San Pablo, but we do expect that there would be a loss of 1 on-street parking space. So the request altogether would result in 5 on-street parking spaces, which would be lost. With that, we've included a resolution that if you approve this, it would direct staff to issue the encroachment permit for the bus stop relocation. And at that point in time, right now we don't have a hard and fast timeline for this. So that my understanding is that we'd work out some of the details with AC Transit, and certainly they'd have to look into their scheduling, but it would be a forthcoming issuance. And this, just to give you some additional information, this went to the Traffic and Safety Commission twice, and on their second review, they forwarded a recommendation to the City Council to direct staff to issue the encroachment permit by a 4-0 vote. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Catherine Vo from AC Transit to present the request from their perspective.
Hello, good evening, council members, vice mayor, and mayor. I'm Catherine Vo, transportation planner at AC Transit. Tonight, I will be presenting on the relocation of the northbound bus stop on San Pablo Avenue at Solano Avenue, as Ann mentioned. To give some more background in terms of the operational setting, the existing condition here is seen here. And it's for our AC Transit lines, our 72s, and that includes our 72 Rapid, and the 18 and the G, which is the Trans Bay line. And this is the highest ridership stop and has the most frequent bus service in all of Albany. And to break that down, it's upwards of 1,000 daily passengers using this bus stop, and there's a bus every 5 minutes. Based on recent data, 3,900 passengers go through the San Pablo corridor every day, and a quarter of those riders begin or end their trips at this bus stop. The reason why we're asking to relocate the bus stop from the near side, I'll explain it a bit more operationally, but just in general, bus riders passing through Albany are often impacted by delays due to the location of this bus stop. Another direct impact of the buses blocking the lane of travel is traffic queuing extending through Buchanan Street, causing impacts not only on hours of delay for motorists and freight, but also on local air quality by the increase in greenhouse gas emissions due to the idling vehicles. According to an AC Transit and City of Albany study, 80% of 72R buses arrived on a green light, which is great because that means that if there are no passengers getting off there, our buses can move on through and be a true rapid. However, most buses had to unload and stop at this bus stop because, like I said, this is the highest ridership stop in Albany. And therefore, most buses waited an entire signal cycle, which is 1 minute and 15 to 2 minutes. And that's just for one bus. So if you extrapolate that throughout the entire corridor of the cars queuing, then it's an added wait time because, of course, the buses are slower and make more frequent stops than individual cars. So in total, the queue is longer than the bare minutes. Additionally, 50% of buses blocked the travel lane due to insufficient curb space, and I'll get more into that with some of the drawings that I'll show. And here, in this picture, you'll see that the 72 bus is preventing the 18 bus from accessing the bus stop, creating further delays through the intersection. This is what we call bus bunching, and usually, excuse me, the buses shouldn't be so clumped together because ideally the first bus would catch the green and able to go through. But because of the near side location, the buses are often stopped at the red for the whole cycle, inhibiting the next bus access to the bus stop. So I'm going to go through some scenarios in terms of different types of bus stops that do exist throughout our service area. So this is the existing condition, and this is very common in older areas and actually in all areas, and it's called a near side stop. The stop that we're talking about here on San Pablo at Solano is too short for buses to pull parallel to the curb. That means the bus blocks passing traffic in one travel lane. That also means that buses block the visibility between the motorists and pedestrians, which is highlighted here. And it's also difficult to board with a wheelchair, cane, or stroller because, as you can see, our front door is not flush with the curb, and that means we can't deploy our ramp, which reduces ADA access and could immobilize many riders who depend on transit. A better condition is extending the bus stop, so that means a longer red curb. It allows the buses to pull parallel, which is great because then we're out of the way of traffic. Traffic can pass, but it still creates a visibility issue. And our bus riders become pedestrians once they exit our bus. So we are in favor of any pedestrian improvements because that protects our riders and it protects potential riders or just people on the street. And so this is better, but we can definitely create a more improved situation. This is the even better condition, and this is what I bring to you today. This is called a far side bus stop. It requires less curb space because the bus requires less room to maneuver into the bus stop because it does the maneuvering in the intersection and can pull in flush to the curb. It allows traffic to pass, so again, the cars can go faster than the bus because they're not dropping off passengers. They can just go on their way. And it decreases likelihood of red light delay, so that reduces bus bunching, it increases our reliability, and again, queuing behind the bus is reduced. But in this condition, buses must wait for cars to pass before re-entering traffic. The best condition, but I think this is kind of far off because of the ownership of the right-of-way is Caltrans. So we would not be able to go down to a single travel lane, but the best condition is to do far side and extend the curb, and that would be like a bus bulb out. And that increases pedestrian visibility and it reduces the walking distance and improves pedestrian flow. So today, I come to you to propose 2 bus stop relocations. As you can see, the red dot is the existing bus stop, and as Ann mentioned, we are proposing to split it into 2 different bus stops. And that is because the 18 and G make a right onto Solano, whereas the 72s and 800 continue straight. All right, so here is the first location for recommendations, and that, as Ann said, spans from Avalon, Closet Karma, and Max's Liquor. And with the relocation of the bus stop to the northeast corner for routes that continue along San Pablo, AZ Transit also requesting to relocate the 18 and G stop to the southwest corner of Solano and Keynes Avenue in order to maintain a bus stop near San Pablo and Solano. So the reason why we're splitting it is, again, to keep mobility for all those users who use this stop. So it's 1,000, but in total it's 3,900 that could potentially use this stop. We're hoping that the level of pedestrian exposure that the relocation of the bus stop generates would likely increase patronage for local businesses' storefronts, having the potential to improve the local economy. AC Transit is anticipating this effect with the recently opened bus stop parklet at Solano and Cornell, the first bus stop parklet in the nation. So this is Mr. Dewey's, where the second bus stop is proposed. And Mr. Dewey's, and along with some of the businesses along that storefront, are interested in becoming the second bus stop parklet in the nation. And this is a rendering of the one in front of Howell's, but it would be very much similar to this, along with bollards in the middle lane to block traffic from going over and doing anything illegal. And usually our dwell time at each stop is around 20 to 30 seconds, unless there's a wheelchair, where it can be upwards of 3 minutes. And again, the proposed bus stop on Solano at Keynes offers opportunities for placemaking and to enhance the urban character along Solano Avenue. Overall, as transit is, naturally, it benefits the community. And those benefits are many. The first is increased pedestrian visibility, increased transit reliability, opportunity for placemaking along Solano Avenue, reduced vehicle queue and idling on San Pablo, and better local air quality. Thank you for the opportunity to present. City staff and I are available for questions.
Thank you. Are there questions from council?
One.
Okay.
I have a question. Would you achieve all the benefits that you're talking about if instead of going to these 2 new locations, you moved the existing bus stop location further south on San Pablo, say about where the Subaru repair place is, and just red curb between the 2 driveways there, which I don't know if that's 80 feet, but it might be closer to 80 feet. Because by now you're moving it some amount of footage to go at the other side of Solano, and you're moving the 18G around the corner, some footage. So what would be the outcome if you moved it further south on San Pablo? So, to a location which I suspect isn't as critical parking for the local merchants, probably not for the Ford Subaru place. You would also, whatever that distance between the 2 driveways are, and if you considered the driveways, no one can park there. So you actually have a pretty good amount of space that a bus could pull in. What was that considered?
It was looked at, but ideally we want to keep the connection between the 18G and the 72s. That's a primary connection that a lot of people take because Trans-Bay riders or even 18 coming from downtown Berkeley will take that to Albany, shop around, and then hop on a 72 to get home. So we want to ideally keep that structure so that people can ride the bus more easily. If we move it down south, we would have to move both down south and reroute the 18 and G in order to connect, because the 18 turns right.
Could you explain that a little bit more? That your explanation kind of confused me. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
Yeah, well, yeah. But I mean,
Could we get a Google Earth up? Thank you.
Perfect.
I mean, and what I'm suggesting is you would essentially keep what you have now in terms of one stop for the buses going north on San Pablo and the buses that are turning right on Solano, but just move that stop further south.
I see. Okay.
And it keeps, it all makes it one stop. It does move it in a different location. And, I understand that you don't have, well, you would still get the visibility benefit of not having somebody right on that top of that corner. But it might not be quite as good for traffic flow, but I think it wouldn't be it wouldn't affect traffic the way this current stop does.
I just want to point out one thing, because that question had actually come up in traffic and safety. And at that time, one thing to point out, we're trying to get the Google Street View. There's already a bus stop in front of Kelly Moore that serves all of these lines. So if that were to be located, you'd have 2 bus stops pretty close together.
All right.
Along those lines, I was looking as to where the next stop from the intersection of Buchanan and San Pablo, as you go north, it's quite a ways already to the next stop further north. I think it's, I don't remember where it was, but
Sorry, I misunderstood your comment. And yes, so as Ann said, we do have a bus stop at Buchanan on the right at Kelly Moore, and this is the Subaru location. So the reason why we wouldn't want this stop ideally is because it's mid-block, and mid-block I didn't go over because it's generally a no-go because our buses are stopping in kind of a random area to through drivers. So pulling in to the stop and then pulling out, it's less natural or intuitive for other vehicles. So therefore, it has a higher rate of collisions. Also at this location, there's no pedestrian crossing. The pedestrian crossing isn't close enough, so whenever there's no clear pedestrian pathway, it could lead to a safety hazard where pedestrians run across the width of the street trying to catch the bus, which happens, and we would like to avoid that as much as possible.
Well, that could be mitigated with the crosswalk, but, I'm not sure what's all involved with adding a crosswalk that doesn't involve Caltrans, which is the added complication on San Pablo. If not perhaps in front of the Ford Subaru repair place, maybe a bit further to the corner, but again, you're sort of mid-block, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm getting, perhaps where there's one lone, on this Google map, there's one lone car, and then there's a driveway, which nobody can park in. But if you were somewhere between the restaurant there and the driveway, that again, that's quite a bit of space, and it is far enough away from the corner that I don't think you have those pedestrian issues. But it's not the corner. It's not an intersection, and somebody would have to go an extra 100 feet to get to a crosswalk.
And it's also, we could extend the bus stop to where the green zone is, so basically take all the parking. Near side stops require more space for our buses to maneuver, so we would actually impact these businesses more than we would if we were to move far side. And we take that into account.
Okay.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
suggestions.
are there any buses coming off the freeway eastbound on Buchanan?
Off the freeway eastbound on Buchanan.
No, coming off the freeway right into this intersection.
Currently, no.
How does the G run?
G does.
Yeah. Does the G run off of Buchanan, or does that come up Gilman?
The G comes up Gilman, but there is a proposal with MTC. It will not actually go to San Paulo, but there's a new park and ride that MTC is building at Buchanan underneath the freeway, and a bus would come off the freeway at Buchanan, but then turn onto Pierce and Central. So it would not come down here.
I'll ask another question, which is, I know currently all of San Pablo from in Contra Costa County down into Oakland is being looked at as part of the Transportation Commissions as a planning thing. How does this go with that planning system? Because I know there was some, talk about bicycle lanes and things that have all kind of been put on hold because the transportation agencies want to do some thorough plan. Is this being done before that, or is that, how's that being taken into consideration?
So this is definitely being considered as an improvement plan as part of the San Pablo ACTC corridor study. We are working with them as on their TAC. Ideally, this stop is going to stay. I should remove ideally because the stop location in this intersection will stay because it is a core bus stop. If anything, the bus stop at Buchanan would be removed in order to basically remove some bus stops that are already close to other existing bus stops. And that will help reduce some of the issues with buses pulling in and out and traffic flow. So this is being looked at with ACTC, and generally moving to the far side is a recommendation. In terms of the future layout of the street, with the 4 different proposals that they had, they did say they would remove parking all along San Pablo. So if that were the case, then I guess we would be able to have our pick of the area. But, in total, it would be up to ACTC and us to discuss that.
Okay, thank you.
So, wait a minute, there's a proposal out there to remove all the parking?
Yeah, so in one of the proposals, there's 4 different ones, and one of them includes removing all the parking to make it more multimodal. And then it's off-street parking.
Do you know about that?
It's all under, lots of different ideas being floated around, so.
It's probably an entire different agenda item,
Yeah.
but the Alameda County Transportation Commission is doing a quarter-long study, and they're looking at some long-term visions. The primary driver of this is to improve transit service and also accommodate, if possible, bicycles. And yes, there are various scenarios they're looking at that would affect this, but I would stress that it's a long-term plan, many, many years away from actually being implemented. This is something that if with council direction, we could take action on if you so direct.
Okay.
Okay, Michael, do you have other questions?
Yeah, let me revert back to the question I had. As you go northbound from Max's Liquor northbound, where is the next stop for this bus? I walk this street every Monday morning with what's called the Blue Glove Crew, which is we do a power walk and pick up litter. I was down there this morning pacing off the distances, and my recollection is it's quite a ways to the next northbound stop.
Sorry.
So if we move the bus stop further south, that creates a big gap. The colors look so bright. I don't really need to know. It's okay.
I was just thinking we could measure the distance. I don't remember off the top of my head, but you are correct. It is a while away because this serves Albany. This is pretty much the 72 line that serves the core of Albany. And then the next stop would serve kind of the perimeter, the outskirt.
This is Google Earth.
No.
You'll notice that on Google Earth, there's a bus pulled in at the stop with its rear end sticking out, just like we've been discussing. And we didn't pay them to do that.
To answer the question, the next stop northbound is at Portland and San Pablo.
Oh, yeah.
Anything else, Michael? No. Nick, do you have any questions?
Yes, I have 2 questions. Why was a green zone considered south of Solano on San Pablo?
From what we heard, the green zones are pretty heavily utilized. So the thought was that we could add additional green zone space to make up for that loss of the one on-street parking space. But it's not set in stone. The city is free to designate the time designation as you see fit.
But the green zone proposed for the north of Solano is the same length as the current green zone.
Yeah, it would be proposed to have 3 green zone spaces.
Okay.
Just for clarification, a green zone is 15 minutes.
20 minutes.
20 minutes, but not 90 minutes, though.
That's correct.
And the 18/G bus stop on Solano that's proposed to move on Solano, would that be a stop in the street or at the bulb out, or would it be a pull-out stop?
In the interim, it would be a pull-out stop, but moving forward, ideally, it would be a bulb out with the parklet, the stoplet.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Michelle? I have several questions, and I'm trying to think of how to make this into a question. So if the bus on Solano, west of Canes, if it pulls in, I understand why it needs to have the parking places removed. If it doesn't pull in, we've never discussed having a parklet. I don't think that should be part of the conversation at this point. Would we need to remove the parking places?
We would have to remove the length of the doors, so you may be able to save the parallel parking spot, but the length of the doors would be, we need a clear area of 24 feet, and that would just be a bulb out at that point.
Because there is a bulb out there on that corner. If the bus were to stop there, could we then maybe move those parking places that are perpendicular to become parallel?
I think that would need more analysis by city staff.
Wouldn't it need analysis by AC Transit?
Well, I mean, in terms of how they would like to rearrange the parking. But overall, that pedestrian bulb isn't wide enough for ADA access. So ideally, we would not want to stop there.
Okay, that's that question. When we talked about how much this cost, one of the costs to the city was repainting the curbs. And I'm wondering why AC Transit isn't responsible for painting the curbs.
The curbs belong to the city, so we're ultimately responsible for the timing designation and however we see fit to paint it, both in terms of zones and in dimensions. That's not, AC Transit's not responsible for maintaining our right-of-way.
So do they have to paint the red?
I believe we would probably paint the red.
Okay, and it's, in all of this, it's a very small point, I'm just curious. Why was the decision made not to put a shelter on the far side?
The conditions aren't good for the shelter placement. There's not enough sidewalk. It's a bit of a different space on that side.
Since this is actually, Caltrans highway, do they need to be part of this discussion at all?
No,
Have they been?
just as we maintain parking and curb identification, we're free to designate this as directed, but we don't need Caltrans oversight for that.
Okay. I know you said you didn't know what the timeline was, but can we sort of ballpark it? Is this 10 years down the road? Is this in the next year? Do we have some general idea?
Once we get approval, we can, and the red curb painted and our poles placed, we can start immediately. So that's our timeline.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question, and I think this is something that we did hear from several of the merchants, is their concern with how the area would look with 1,000 extra people standing on the sidewalk during the day. Have we thought about how both the city and waste management with the trash pickup and AC Transit having some responsibility here, how we'll keep these areas looking as nice as they can? Have we talked about how that might work?
We haven't talked about maintenance with any degree of specificity. There was some mention of potentially adding a big belly can there if we can to help with trash collection, and that's a detail that could be, in terms of location and putting a big belly there, something that could be worked out as part of this.
Okay, thank you. Okay, before we open it up, is there any more questions from council?
Could you just remind me how many bus riders there are daily who use this stop?
Yes, at this particular location, it's about 1,000.
Okay.
But if we're looking also at the delay by the near side stop, it's upwards of 300,900. So it's a lot, and that's how we look at ridership and effectiveness. It's number of butts in seats for how long. And so while 1,000 people will switch off and board or get off the bus at this location, the delay is causing a lot more hurt on our riders.
So understood about that, but I didn't catch the second number. So 1,000 deboarding or onboarding daily now, but you expect that to increase. Is that what you're saying, or?
No, so in total, so each bus that's full, not all the riders get off. So in total, in one day, there's 3,900 passengers through this corridor.
Oh, okay. Who are on? Okay, who are on buses traveling through the corridor? Okay, got it. Thank you.
And that's just in one direction, correct?
That is correct. That's only at this bus stop.
Okay. Then I have one other question. I know years ago, we moved the bus stop on the other side of San Pablo to where it is now in front of Subway. Do we have any feedback on that? I know it was contentious at the time. Do we have any idea if all the dire predictions we heard came true?
The decision-making process for that relocation occurred before I started working for the city.
It was a while ago.
It was, yeah. But no, since I've been here, I have not heard of anything, any concerns about the operational effects of the relocation. The bus shelter itself, we do get lots of complaints about and completely understand why. And it's not a key to your decision-making this evening, but I do understand that AC Transit is going to be terminating the arrangement with Clear Channel, who maintains those facilities, in the next couple of years. So we'll see those bus stops go away, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I think that's the case.
Yes,
thank you.
AC Transit also hasn't gotten any complaints in regards to the other direction bus stop. And it is true, our contract with the shelter company, Clear Channel, is ending next year, and we're reevaluating what steps we want to take in the future.
Great.
Oh, so that does lead me to one more question. Some bus stops have a next bus signage. But currently this bus stop does not, correct? I can't remember. In any case, are you proposing any electronic signage for the proposed new locations?
We would have to look at that to see how we would place it. I know that some businesses in Berkeley are actually being very transit forward and having a transit screen in their business, which alerts riders of times for various modes of transportation. It's Lime Bike, Go Forward Bike, bus, Uber, Lyft, and we've seen that work. But in terms of if we wanted a ticker here, we are currently transitioning to a new technology, so we can open that and further discuss that if wanted.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else from council?
Just a quick
More?
one. There was a thought about putting if there was going to be a bus stop near Albany Subaru, we could conceivably put a crosswalk across San Pablo. I suspect Caltrans wouldn't go for that because that is their turf, but I just wanted some clarification on that.
Also, while Jeff comes up here, we wouldn't want to stop there unless it was a full signalized or a rapid beacon, because we need to make sure that our pedestrians, our riders, can safely cross any crosswalk, especially across 4 lanes. Jeff?
Catherine just made the main point that I wanted to make, is that someone rushing for the bus could maybe do something that would be a little dangerous. We have not talked to Caltrans about the feasibility of a mid-block crosswalk there. Generally, they don't like them, but today it's you employees going back and forth, so there might be some merit to it, but generally Caltrans doesn't like those.
Okay, we'll open this up to public comment. Could I get a show of hands of people that wish to speak? Okay. I think we will give you 2 minutes each. Please try not to repeat what the previous speakers have said, rather agree and make any new points. And I also want to remind you that you need to be respectful of each speaker, address the council and not the audience. And please, we don't have you applaud or make negative comments because we want everyone to feel comfortable with what they want to say and not to be intimidated by other members of the audience. So can I get the first three? If you haven't turned in a speaker card, if you could do so, or after you speak is okay too.
James Silva, Sean Charles, and Albert Chung.
Good evening. My name's James Silva. I own Avalon Glassworks, which is where this proposed bus is being relocated. If I could ask staff to put the red zone up again. At the traffic and safety meeting, AC Transit suggested that this was going to be an 80-foot bus stop because they have extended buses that they want to run through continuing down. Where the city has designated it would be the bus stop, this tree is 65 feet from the corner. My shop's here, I took a tape measure to it. There's a bus, there's a tree right where the front door is supposed to be for this bus. They're proposing another 15 feet in front of that for pullout. So it's more parking lost than is actually being discussed. The parking is a huge issue, and it's a huge issue to the businesses. My shop is a custom shop. I'm constantly carrying large sheets of glass. I have clients, contractors who are bringing in large stained glass windows. I have clients who are coming in for consultations. It's not just 20 minutes. They're spending an hour, hour and a half. I teach class. Those are 3-hour classes. So in addition to me, I'm there 10, 12 hours a day. So there are many different needs for different types of parking. And what's being proposed is sort of, oh, well, there's a 20-minute zone there. Well, I have students who need parking. I need parking for myself to be there all day. Furthermore, having a bus parked out front of our shop every 5 minutes is not really, it's horrible for my business. It's not what I'm paying rent so that I can have a bus parked out front. I hope. I sent a letter. I hope you all have read it. There's lots of issues, just even with traffic, with people, the pedestrians walking across against a left turn lane, the green light. So there's lots of issues. Please don't approve this.
Thank you.
My name is Albert Chung, and I'm the son of Sulan Chung, who's the property owner of 843 San Pablo Avenue, which is the White Lotus restaurant. So the gentleman before me basically said a lot of the stuff that I was going to say, because for a lot of our businesses, parking is the lifeblood of it. Especially like for ours, which is a restaurant and stuff, people have to be able to go in and out of it, some for takeout, some for long-term and other stuff. So this would impact, a lot of their businesses and stuff. And it's not just us, but all the other property, businesses in that area. So the loss of parking spaces is a very big concern for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
After Sean would be Benjamin Diaz, Vika Scarcha, and Sangeeta Garcha.
All right. Good evening. My name is Sean Charles, and I'm the president of the Albany Chamber. I should disclose that I'm a volunteer with the City of Albany as a board member on the Economic Development Committee, but tonight I'm solely representing the views of the Albany Chamber. The Chamber is here tonight in support of all the businesses affected by the proposed AC Transit bus stop relocation. Over the past few weeks, the Chamber has fielded and been inundated with many concerned business owners, much who are here this evening. The vast majority of the business owners the vast amount of the business owners directly affected by this proposal are in fact new businesses. You'll hear many of them tonight, including Juanita and Maud, Closet Karma, and Kingship Realty Group. Over the past couple of years, the city has seen tremendous revitalization efforts taking place on Lower Solano Avenue and wrapping around onto San Pablo Avenue. Certain efforts and support have come from the city and local business organizations. This includes AC Transit, who generously worked with the city and local business on the Parklet project. However, we must recognize that true credit must go to the merchants. For businesses like Avalon Glassworks, how special it is to take an empty space and fill it with creativity, life, joy, and community. This is done at a financial, physical, and emotional cost only few can bear. Where the 800 block of San Pablo lay dormant for many years, we now see more businesses choosing to invest in this area. In just a few short years, we welcome Powell Dental. We've seen the growth and relocation of Nest Bedding and witnessed the tremendous growth and popularity of Hanabi Judo. These businesses have a voice, and I implore the council to hear them this evening before deciding on the matter. The explosion of growth on this block presents its own challenges for many of the merchants. I have an office directly across the street from the affected block. From 9 a.m. on this is probably one of the most busiest blocks in Albany. To lose an additional 5 parking spots would be pretty crucial. Let's have another minute. A disconcerting issue is the amount of parking the proposal takes away from these small businesses. Combined with this, with the potential bike lane and pedestrian crossing in Washington and San Pablo, the city could be drastically wiping out a vast majority of customer parking within 2 consecutive blocks. Consider only Royal Cafe and Mechanics Banks have parking lots, which are both private lots exclusive to their businesses. With limited parking already in existence, there are no other parking provisions or
Sean, you do need to wrap it up.
for these merchants. So please do your due diligence in supporting the businesses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, good evening. My name is Benjamin. I'm the owner of Kingship Realty Group. I just want to start by saying I truly enjoy Albany. It's a great city. Just today, some of my agents and I were out patronizing the businesses, getting coffee, going to the new spice store. We truly enjoy our time here. My agents and I picked Albany for those reasons, but if I had known that a bus stop was going to be put there, I more than likely would have not established my business here. Like I said, we really enjoy it, and this would really hinder our ability to provide for our families. And I would hate to leave and relocate my business to another city. I'd rather stay here and help the city grow. And that's all I really have to say. I really hope you take into consideration that we have to provide and just enjoy the city. You don't want to have too many people backing it up. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Vikas Garcha. I'm co-owner of Maxus Liquors. So Maxus Liquors uses this green zone a lot. You know, customer use it. We use it for unloading and loading purposes. If you can pass these pictures to them, that how our merchants use this loading zone. Customer use the loading zones. I have letters from my customers. We have a petition signed by more than 500 customers. 80% of these customers use our green zone parking, and they say that if there is no parking outside, we won't patronize this business. Here is the petition for the 500 customers. Last time in 2013, I had 1,500 people sign this petition. I submitted to the city council meeting at that time, and these are the letters from my customers saying that this shouldn't be done. You know, if you want to have it, take a look at these ones. And also there are 19 business owners who signed this paper, says that loss of parking is not a good idea to move the AC Transit bus stop on Solano and San Pablo Avenue. And my suggestion would be, removing just one parking spot behind where the bus stop is right now, so that it gives enough room for the bus to pull in, and so that would alleviate a lot of the problems, including the traffic and others. And so please don't approve this bus stop. The parking is the lifeblood of the business. We are here since 1923. This business is almost like we are almost about to have 100 years of business in Albany. Thank you.
Thank you.
After Sangeeta would be Preston Jordan and Chris Cole.
Hi, good evening, council members. My name is Sangeeta Garcha, and I'm the co-owner of business Max's Liquors. So I don't want to repeat what he said. He pretty much covered everything I wanted to say. I just wanted to bring to your attention is that green zone is also used by the delivery trucks that we get, and we get 18-wheelers who come and deliver to our businesses. Not only our business, but also businesses down on Solano. They also use the, the restaurants. They use that space to, park their trucks and deliver to us. I also wanted to say when their 18-wheeler is parked in that space, and if you move the bus stop at that location, so the delivery trucks won't be able to utilize that space to deliver, unload, and load. And so there's traffic right now where the bus stop is. There's only traffic coming from one direction behind that bus. But if you move it down in front of Max's Liquors, it's going to be dealing with traffic coming 3 ways behind it. And with having delivery trucks parked, a parallel parking next to the, the bus stop, I don't know how that's really going to improve the traffic flow in any manner. So I really would hope and, just really request you guys, please look into this matter and be supportive of your local businesses. It's not very often that we come to you guys for, request, but this is the first time we are asking you for your help. So please take this, all of our comments in consideration, and then just don't relocate the bus stop. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for considering this item. Preston Jordan speaking for Albany Strollers and Rollers. It's a bit confusing to be relitigating this because the Council voted as a part of the Complete Streets Plan 5 years ago to move the bus stop in concept. So I hope that you'll follow through on that. Putting the bus stop mid-block is a bad idea. It makes people have to walk further and increases the danger of crossing mid-block on San Pablo. There will be a green zone, so there'll still be loading and unloading possible, as you've seen from staff's presentation. I hope you'll focus on the fact that we heard from the AC Transit planner, there's 4,000 people a day, 3,900 people a day riding the bus through here, and every one of those people is delayed by a minute to a minute and a half. That's over 2 person days every day of life that's lost sitting in the bus. The reason they need to get through, have to stop on the far side is the bus, because there's so much congestion, the bus can't get to the stop unless it's a green light, and then it has to stop at the green light, and then the light turns red while its passengers are boarding and unboarding. So it's just a giant mess. And the idea of the loss of parking space, it's really a false choice, because you've seen there's 5 lines that serve this spot. So you really need 2 bus stops. Wherever you put them, you need 2 bus stops. You need the length of 2 bus stops because there's just no way that 2 buses aren't going to arrive sometimes. So again, it's a false choice. If you're truly going to serve the bus riders, then you really need to split this into 2 stops. And you can make it a longer stop on San Pablo. You can put one around the corner, but the idea of not taking away any parking is just not serving transit at all. I'm still amazed that the liquor store doesn't see the fact that 1,000 people are going to be onboarding and offboarding right in front of their store as a potential customer base is amazing. And I'm fascinated with the idea that Berkeley businesses put a next bus sign in their store so the bus riders can see, oh, I've got 5 minutes, I can go in and buy something. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and council members. Chris Cole, I represent the property owner who owns Max's in the stores there. 2 minutes is not very long, given how much AC Transit has been able to talk, so I just want to go through these maybe in bullet points. And to follow up somewhat on Councilmember Moss's point about moving this south, all it would take is to leave this bus stop where it is, take 1 or 2 or 3 parking spaces from south of where the current bus stop is, and these buses could easily move right into the bus stop as it currently exists, because south of the bus stop is, well, there are 4 spaces there, 1 green zone, but there's also a parking lot for the other businesses that are there. So you're taking away maybe 2 parking spaces, but you're going to give enough space for 2 buses to pull in there. You're going to solve that problem. if you're going to move the bus stop as AC Transit wants, you now have 2 bus stops. You have people who have to cross San Pablo and Solano to get from one bus to the other. So you're creating people crossing the street rather than stopping them from having to cross the street. The last thing is you could move this bus stop north to in front of the parking space for Royal Cafe and Albany Florist. And I walked that off today. It would be, if you moved it there from the back exit of the bus, somebody would have to walk 235 feet to the corner of San Pablo and Solano, and it would take them, if they walked as I did, normal walking gait, 52.9 seconds to do that. It would take them that much to do. That's a better solution for the merchants who rely on this. It's something that's easily done for AC Transit, and I ask you to consider one of those 2 other solutions if you move this at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm a new merchant at 863 San Pablo Avenue in Albany. My name is Amy Moore, and I'm the owner and operator of Closet Karma, which is a women's consignment boutique. Since opening my doors January of this year, reaction from the community has been beyond expectation. I already have regular customers who visit on a weekly basis. I've been overwhelmed by the welcome I've received with frequent comments such as, "We're so glad to see you and your business. We've needed this for quite a while in our neighborhood." I also frequently hear comments such as, "I've driven by and have wanted to visit your store, and today I finally saw a parking spot. So here I am." These women, usually women, spend more than 20 minutes in my store. And the fact is they drive. They frequently have to leave in the middle of their experience to move their car, and they either return or they don't. They leave. I am so happy to be an Albany merchant, and I absolutely love the community of merchants I've joined. My understanding is that most, if not all, merchants on our block have expressed opposition to the bus stop relocation, each with concerns related to parking, loading, unloading, and other issues. Having just opened, the negative impact this will have on the success of my small homegrown business, it worries me. The Albany community values what we offer, and my hope is that you will as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alan Maris, Albany resident, a former council member, and I was on the council when this was considered once before. And we got very similar response from the merchants. From AC Transit's perspective, I see their position. This very much improves the transportation time for their bus and being able to be on the north side and the far side of an intersection, a busy intersection. That makes a lot of sense to them. What we have to consider is what, and you know this, what makes sense to us and our merchants. So we had very similar arguments in the past. If you have any questions about what happened in the past, I'll try to remember and come up with answers. Thanks for considering this issue.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brian Parsley, Albany resident. I've got no dog in this hunt, so let's go with this. This is a hot mess. So there are a lot of issues. Number one, the bus is sticking out. Happens. It's only part of the problem. I've driven this many times. I live on the upper part of Solano. I do go to the lower part of Solano sometimes. AC Transit has a very difficult time turning the corner. That issue is not going to change with a new bus stop. That bus is still going to have a very hard time going around that corner, and that's going to cause delays. I understand that some of the businesses are going to have issues. I live next to a commercial district called Solano Avenue. We have some of those issues as well. I think it's important to understand that a green zone, a 90-minute zone, is public parking. It's not a loading zone. They don't own it. The city of Albany owns it. If I want to park there for 20 minutes and their load comes, that's just life. It's not a loading zone. It is 20-minute public parking. And if it's 90-minute public parking, that's what it is. If this issue is that big of a deal, then maybe we need to look at parking meters. The real issue is what we need is what we've kind of danced around for many, many years, and that is a public parking garage. And that is the only thing that is going to help the merchants in this community is a public parking garage, because there is frankly not enough parking on Solano Avenue. And that's the only thing that's going to make the members, the residents whose people park in front of their house is going to make them happy, because this is the constant argument we have on every single issue when it comes to a new business or anything. So I don't know what the issue, the resolve is going to be, but I think you're in for a long night.
I'm sorry, Brian.
Thank you.
You mentioned problem turning the corner. Did you mean the northbound?
The buses are too big to turn that corner.
No.
Sorry.
The northbound bus on San Pablo making a right-hand turn onto Solano, or the westbound bus on Solano making the right-hand turn onto San
The northbound bus turning east onto Solano, which is usually the 18. There are essentially on the north side of Solano Avenue, it becomes 3 lanes there. It becomes the turn lane, the lane to go straight, and then there is a smaller left-hand turn lane. So that's right at that intersection. It's almost like 3 lanes of traffic. And then you have the buses coming into their single lane of traffic. If you've ever been there and watched, the buses consistently cross over the double yellow line because that turn for the 18 is just frankly too sharp. I've watched it hundreds of times. So I would suggest, if you'd like, you go out there and watch the 18 turn. It's very rarely turning into that lane. Sometimes they have to stop if there's a vehicle stopped at that stoplight to turn right, or I'm sorry, to turn left onto San Pablo. If there's vehicles stacked up there, they can't make that turn.
We'll talk about it
I'll show you later.
Thank you. Okay, well, are there any more comments from the public? Okay, bring it back to council. Nick, do you want to start with some comments?
Oh, gosh. Okay. I'll try. There's a lot to say, I think, and so I'll give it a shot with a few first thoughts anyway. Probably have to speak some more to this. So I think AC Transit made a good case for what they want to do is in alignment with their best practices. This is through years of studying of how buses work and how bus stops work. They know that the far side is the right place to put it. And they know that, there's reasons why they don't do mid-block stops, a lot of good reasons why they don't do it. A mid-block stop looks like it would even require actually another intersection, would require us to put another signalized intersection if we did that. So I think AC Transit knows what they're doing in making this request. I do have, so let's bring up the issue of parking first. So I get it that no one likes to lose parking spaces, but we have to juggle all the factors. We have to do what's right And oftentimes, making a change means that something else loses. There's, the scale balances. One of the things that if we want to ensure empty parking places for people to park in, the thing you do is to implement parking meters. And if you implement parking meters, then you do the residential parking permits so the residents aren't impacted. This is what the big guys do. This is what cities do when they want to make sure that businesses have parking spaces, is they implement parking meters so that there is turnover, so that certain people choose not to bring their cars. It does strike me that several times during the comments in the presentation that we are using that green zone for the purpose of a yellow zone, of a loading zone. And so I think what hasn't been discussed here is there a need for different types of parking in that location? There's a store that has a lot of loading and unloading of products, Max's Liquor, and the glass shop as well, we're hearing has a lot of loading and unloading. Perhaps some yellow zone there is needed. And the green zone really is if you want to encourage or want to give people the ability to have the short stops, which I imagine would favor only Max's Liquor, as far as I can tell, of all the businesses there. So to me already, I think we need to go back to the drawing board, because this is also what cities do, is they have not only the green and the red zones, but they have the white zones, they have the yellow zones. Are we thinking of all the zones in this case? I also agree that for a business like Max's and perhaps others, having 1,000 people right in front of your business every day, I can't see how that can't help. I think that's going to help. I think that can only help your business. And if you tell me that no, you only want or that it's only the patronage of the people who drive and park in the green zone that makes your business, I question that. In general, we want to, it goes to our carbon reduction goals to facilitate great walking, great bicycling, and great transit in the city. Encouraging people to drive a lot singly in cars does not further our carbon reduction goals, and in fact impacts that. So that's one thing we have to consider here. I think we have to do the right thing for the people who take transit, for the 1,000 people who take transit who use that every day. So I probably have more to say about this. And generally, I'm in favor, but I would like to hear more discussion about the different colored zones, how we could make that work. I also would like us to look at all the mitigations. If it's parking, I think there's a number of ways we can move forward with mitigations on that. We can examine, already Mechanics Bank opens their lot in the evening to people who are not Mechanics Bank customers. The lot between Royal Cafe and the flower shop could also choose to do the same, or the city could negotiate with them to do the same. Or, the last resort, the city has tools like eminent domain, where they say, we need the parking, we're gonna take this for the parking. There is, I think there is, though, in that whole block, in the block, the Max's Liquor block, just saying Max's Liquor because it's on the corner there, I do think, given the parking that I know about, you might have to park far away, but and you won't get parking right in front. But I don't see parking hugely impacted there. if we work on, and if it is, we have tools. We have the parking meters, we have other tools. Okay, I'm rambling a little bit now, so I better stop there and say generally in favor, but I think we need to fine-tune this a bit more.
Rochelle?
Yeah, my perspective is pretty close to what Nick has articulated. I do believe that this has been part of the planning for years now. And so it does seem that it has been pretty thoroughly examined by one group after another. So for all the reasons that Ms. Vogue gave, it does look like it is something that probably needs to be done to address what is a pretty terrible situation down there. I would be inclined to want to look for ways to, if there are opportunities for creating more parking, and I don't know whether we've done an inventory of potential additional parking. We're talking about 5 spaces. That seems like a problem that we could find a solution to. I know that does not address the issues with loading and unloading, nor with the sort of quality of location impacts that will affect, I guess, particularly Avalon and White Lotus and the whatever else might occur. So I'm supportive of granting AC Transit's request, but I would like to also examine what other alternatives can be investigated for additional parking, for not only for automobiles, but also for bicycles, for other ways that people are going to get around. Because the truth about parking is ultimately it's limited. You just cannot, the idea of a municipal parking garage is very attractive, but municipal parking garages fill up and people are still short of parking. The ultimate solution is to offer better ways for people to get around on alternative modes. And that's what we're trying to do here, is make it a better experience for the transit riders. So,
okay. So, you want to opine?
Sure. I must say, when this came up some years ago, previous to me being on council, I didn't pay an enormous amount of attention to the issue, but it seemed at the time, I have to say, a no-brainer that you would do this, that you would move that bus stop to the other side of San Pablo, and it would clear up a huge traffic jam that exists, particularly during rush hour times. I think I am still, think this is something that should go forward, but I would say in the whole process of this coming before council, I'm definitely feeling more sympathetic to the effect it'll have on individual businesses that have set up their establishments based on the existing situation and what that might be affected by a change of moving this stop into these 2 new locations. And, I can feel sympathetic to that. I do wish that it was at least possible that AC Transit consider the possibilities of either moving that the existing stop either further south on San Pablo, or perhaps instead of the location they were talking about, perhaps further north, closer to the cafe, But, you know, if this is a rule set that we can't have bus stops in mid-blocks, then, you know, both of those are mid-block bus stops and don't make particularly a lot of sense. Kind of in the long term, I do know that San Pablo is being looked at by the Alameda County Transportation Commission and I believe the Contra Costa Transportation Authority, and there will be changes. I don't know how quickly, but there probably will be changes that make San Pablo Avenue much more transit-friendly and more of a complete streets, which will probably translate into more and more parking going away on a long-term basis. This isn't going to happen this year. It's not going to happen next year. We're probably 5, 10, or longer number of years into the future on this. But as this street is going to be getting a rapid bus system, more complete streets, bicycle-friendly, et cetera, those changes are likely to come down. And in the big picture, I think that's a good thing. But it's going to be challenging for local businesses to respond to that, and how they respond to that will have to be worked off. This idea of a parking garage, you know, again, this was actually in our general plan that we just redid up until the last revision, and it was eventually dropped. Not so much that I think because it would be a bad thing, but it's just a very difficult thing to pull off. You would have to get perhaps some of the existing parking for Mechanics Bank or the theater parking to somehow get them to come together to build a garage facility. It's sort of a good idea, but not, you know, perhaps beyond the means of a city like Albany to do that. Perhaps there could be some way of working out something with them, but, you know, that's a little beyond the scope of what we're talking about tonight. As was said by both Nick and Rochelle, you know, ultimately, you know, the current parking doesn't really meet everybody's needs, and we're going to be tweaking it and perhaps making it a little more difficult. But I think if we look at where these green zones are going and where yellow zones could go for loading and unloading, this may mitigate some of the pain. I'm not saying it'll mitigate all of it, but it could help. So finally, the ideas I'd like to say to, well, to the bus, to AC Transit, you know, I think if you are going to do this, I hope you will include things like these next bus signs, you know, make these, you know, friendly stops so that it becomes something that you know, really helps the environment where these buses are stopping. Also, the idea of a parklet, I'm somebody who's much in favor of the parklet ideas, and although that's not your issue, I hope that if this bus stop is going to go around the corner on Solano, that could become a parklet, because I think in the long run, that is the kind of development we need to encourage businesses in that area. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, Michael?
Can we get the picture back up of the length of the new red zone that you anticipate if we put the stop there? Okay, that's good. Now, I was down there this morning. As it is now, the current green zone starts on the left-hand side. It starts on the other side of the tree a little bit, by about 2 or 3 feet. So this is, as proposed now, is you know, it's about 5 feet longer than the existing green zone. Is that reasonable? Okay, so there's a question of whether or not this is really a sufficient distance to pull buses in and out of there. This is what the owner of the Avalon store asked. He seems to think it's not, because there's a possibility of running articulated buses on that through there in the future? Can we get a comment, say, from the AC Transit person? Is this going to be the length of the bus stop or not?
Hi, we currently run articulated buses for the 800 route, and that's the OWL route, so that's like midnight service. And all other routes, the normal routes, 72s, and the 18 and G, which is proposed on Solano, those are all 40-footers. The G is actually 42 feet.
And how long is this stop here?
This stop
That's 80 feet, correct? 80 feet, so that's twice as long as the bus.
Mhm. So our 40-footers fit perfectly, and our 60-footers will also fit as well with maneuvering.
Okay. Now,
Well,
you had said,
Yes.
so, and you had said previously that we don't need to decide tonight the color. So see where the red zone ends on the left? You can, so basically what's happened here is there used to be a green zone. We've turned it red, but we can take the green zone and just move it 80 feet up the street. Or we can paint it some other color. We don't have to decide what that, right? Right, like that. But we don't have to decide tonight what that color is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so what I'm trying to get at here is what is the minimum decision we have to make tonight to keep this moving? Now, can you go back to the red zone? So I'm under the assumption now that that's what the red zone looks like. That's what it's going to look like. Now, if we move the bus to there, does that automatically trigger closing down the old bus stop on the south side? And then, so if we do this, then we have to move the other buses up on, to put that spot up on.
That's correct.
But we don't have to put a parklet there.
That's correct.
They do, however, we have to lose the parking, though, either way, whether they pull in or just stay in the line of traffic, because AC Transit for ADA access has to have that space clear. So we can't leave cars parked there and have the bus come and
Yeah,
go.
we can't have a bus vehicle conflict.
Okay. And as you stated earlier, that as conceived of now, the net loss on San Pablo is one parking spot. That's correct. And then, so it's one parking spot there, and then we're going to lose 4 up on Canes by Mr. Dewey's. Okay. How much, this is kind of a far-fetched question, but let's say there are, pretty much what we're doing now is fairly inexpensive. It's paint and a few signs, right? So let's say there was some horrible unforeseen consequence, and AC Transit comes back to us and says, oh, sorry, can we go back to the old way? Hypothetically, it's just paint and signs, right? It's not like we've really done a lot of work.
Right, there's not a lot in the way of permanent infrastructure. It's as you mentioned, it's signage on a pole and paint on the curb.
So conceivably, we could change our mind if something were to go wrong. I do want everyone to understand this is a Caltrans state highway. You have to, I think, realistically have to have a different set about what you might want to expect in the future, because Caltrans ultimately has some say here too. And Caltrans is, they're not us. They're not your nice local little government bureaucracy. I have real hesitations to say, oh, we are not going to do this to preserve parking when Caltrans could steamroll us all in 5 years anyway. So that's a concern I have. And I think ultimately, I can tell you where the momentum is going. The momentum is that Caltrans is going to steamroller us, if not in 5 years, in 10 years. I think we need to accept that probably there's going to be a lot of changes on this street in the next 10 years. Parklets, that's not, we don't really need to talk about the parklet tonight, right? That's a completely separate issue. So I'll skip it. Mid-block crosswalks on San Pablo Avenue, Caltrans is not, I think, going to go for that in the long run. You can't bet on Caltrans going for that. So I think we should remove that from consideration. Interestingly enough, as I left City Hall this morning after a brief meeting, I pulled out right up there, made the left turn to go up to San Pablo, and sure enough, the bus was there blocking the intersection, just like it is half the time when I go through that intersection. So I just had to laugh about that this morning. And it is a pain. I mean, I think it's hard for people, you know, in the public sector. People who get their aux scored know it, but the people who are suddenly hurt by a policy often don't. For example, if you cut the military budget, the Department of Defense screams, but a whole lot of people have a little bit more money in the country. And it's hard to aggregate the benefits and the costs in a way that people can weigh them in a clear manner. And then there's these issues of the buses turning. I don't know. We'll have to see how that works out. But our AC Transit person has something to say about that.
Yes, so our buses have an issue at turning because of the near side stop. We have to pull to the curb. So when you're normally driving, you wouldn't pull to a curb to make a turn, a right turn. So if we close that stop, our alignment is better to make that right turn, so we wouldn't be going over the line.
So if you're northbound on San Pablo, you're no longer pulling into the curb, so you can swing wider when you turn eastbound onto Solano Avenue.
Yep, we can make a proper turn.
What about, now your buses still come westbound downhill on Solano and make, is it a left or right turn? Make a left, but that's quite a bit of longer turning radius, correct?
And we haven't had issues with that one.
Okay. Another thing that I've noticed also, by the way, even if you got rid of two parking spots on the south so the bus could totally pull in parallel, the trouble is there's so much traffic accumulating at that stop light that the cars don't let the bus out. And, you know, the bus is still stuck there until the traffic thins out enough that the bus feels like it can safely get back into the lane of traffic. So even if we did make that bus stop bigger, the current bus stop longer, the bus pulled in totally parallel, you still have a problem.
Exactly.
So that's something else to consider. So, and also I don't want to spend much time on this because other council members have said it. I think there can be a lot of advantages to having more foot traffic along that area. There's not a lot now, and I'm not sure that would have dire consequences to have more eyes on the street down there. Back to you, Mayor.
Okay. The nice part about being last is a lot of my questions were answered. But I do want to ask you again about the right turn for the 18. If the 18 gets stuck, either it pulls in and can't get back out at Canes, or it doesn't pull in, and it starts to back the traffic up on Solano, are we just moving our problem around the corner?
So the design that we're looking at for the bus stop at Canes would allow us proper movements. So normally our bus only stops there for 20, 30 seconds, as I said, unless there's a wheelchair.
And it pulls all the way in?
It pulls all the way in every time,
Okay.
which is why we design for pure ADA access.
Okay.
And so how we're designing it, it's so that we can easily maneuver in and out, but not obstruct if we were to pull all the way into the bay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, can we get some clarification? We're talking about now, when the bus pulls in front of Mr. Dewey's, is it going to be in the lane of traffic, blocking traffic, or is it going to pull all the way in so traffic going uphill to the east can still just go by the bus?
If there is no bus bulb or stoplet, parklet, then our bus will pull all the way into the bay to the sidewalk. But if there is a bus bulb or parklet, it would stop in the lane of traffic, as it does at Solano and Cornell, with the median blocked so that cars cannot go around the bus. And again, our buses don't take that long to unload passengers, so overall it shouldn't have a huge impact. It'd probably be the same amount of time as a car backs out and switches parking.
Now, the other question that I had, and I think Mr. Silva brought it up, is this tree here. You know, and I do think sometimes we design something and all of a sudden it's like, ooh, there's something in front of my door. Is that tree going to impede the bus? I mean, it certainly looks to me like he's got a good point that it's right there.
No, the tree will not impede the bus. As you said, it's 65 feet. Our buses are 40 feet. And so there's no tree in the area that we're placing our sign. And then even the 60-foot bus is still clear of that tree. So whenever we're looking at proposed bus stops, we always take that into account because a lot of cities, and we also don't want to remove trees.
So could the bus stop be shorter?
The bus stop could not be shorter because we do need that length in front to maneuver out.
Okay. Okay, I don't think I have any other questions. I do want to thank staff for these pictures, both this one and the one with the green zone. That's really made it easy for me, at least, to visualize exactly what we're talking about. Yes, go ahead.
One more quick question. It was mentioned in the staff report that it came up during the traffic and safety meeting, but if we eliminated the right turn lane on Solano going, north on San Pablo, I know a lot of cars take that turn, but would it, what effect would that have on traffic? And if you did eliminate that, could you get another parking space in there?
Traffic and safety did look at that, and this is basically the yellow, what would be the space in front of, from the theater towards the intersection.
Right.
We could do a more thorough analysis of the volume of cars that are there. Right now in the mornings, it's a pretty heavily used right turn, and it helps traffic flow for vehicles. But we could maybe have some sort of a timed arrangement where it's no parking in the mornings during the heavy volume times, and then make it available for parking in later portions of the day, and then we could have a parking space. It probably does need a little bit more analysis before reaching any conclusions about that, but we'd be happy to do that if you'd like.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great idea to look at that, because it sounds like even adding one more space or a green zone or perhaps a loading zone, if it could be restricted in time, could be.
Loading zone also came to my mind. If Max's needs a loading zone, that could be a spot for Max's loading zone.
Right.
Mayor, I had a few comments.
Sure, please.
Okay, so I think the where the people board and the fact that there are going to be people in front of the businesses is more likely a positive thing. Plus, there won't be any shelter there. I mean, the bus shelter is great for patrons, but it also, unfortunately, sometimes if they're not maintained, they get dirty. Sometimes at night, they might be used for not so great purposes. So it's probably best that it's going to be a clear space there, and the shelter will be removed from the other side. But I had this at the top of my notes, and I'm sorry I neglected to say this to now, but I want to let you know that I am very happy to see the new businesses in town, and I am very happy to see thriving businesses in town. And I have spoken to one of the business owners, the business owner that reached out directly to me, and I've spoken to the head of the chamber, and I've spoken to the head of the Solano Avenue Association about this. It's a tough call. But we have to ultimately do what makes sense for all of the city and for the ridership and the people in cars who are backed up on San Pablo Ave, and for and think about Caltrans and our Alameda County transportation system. I really like what you said, Michael, about we do have this represents paint and signage changes. I think we should do it and see what happens, and see if there's, and if, not see what happens, but evaluate it. That's a better way of saying it, and see if there are impacts that we're not thinking of. We do have that option it's an easy change to make other changes later. And I do think we do need to look at whether or not it makes sense for it to be a green zone there. I guess it does. It is kind of funny, though, the greens, where we're going to put the green zone on the north side, it really will be, it sounds like it will be used for loading and for short-term parking. If we're okay with that, we're okay with that. But I do think that it's come up, that the loading zone issue has come up. So I like where you're going with this, Michael. The encroachment permit is for the bus stop, the 2 bus stops, the new 2 bus stops, and we don't have to decide tonight on Solano Avenue changes or other painting changes. Although what's proposed looks pretty right, so we could go that way, but I'm prepared to vote yes either way.
I'd just like to suggest that we at least give some direction. I don't want to just say, let's move the bus stops and then not deal with the green zone. I think we need to do that. And I think the green zone where it is here going north, I think we all kind of agree with it. That's just almost a replacement. It's a little further north, but I think that's what that is. I would like to give us a little bit of, have us give a little bit of thought to the green zones on the south side of the intersection. Personally, and we can talk about it, I'm not sure we need green zones there. We have the one. You know, one of the businesses that we did hear from and that is going to be impacted by all of this is the YMCA. And green zones don't really help because most people exercise for more than 20 minutes. So I think if we could have those, which are on the screen now, those regular 90-minute parking, probably leave the green zone that's already there if we want to. I think that would serve. I think that would serve the community better.
I think that's a great idea, and I think I was trying to think about why is there a green zone needed there at all, but perhaps it's for takeout for one of the restaurants that's over there. That's all I can think of. Otherwise, there's not a retail establishment there that would, like Max's, that needs the quick pullout. So, I'm in favor of not converting the bus zone to green, but rather to regular parking.
Mm-hmm. Ann, do you have any thoughts about why we have that one green zone now? And
I don't know why it's there, to be perfectly honest with you. It's just
There is,
for a long time.
There is the burrito place.
The burrito, there's hot burrito, whatever it's called. There's this little sporting goods store, Mary and Joe's, which has been there forever. And
keep in mind there is a parking lot there, though.
Yeah, I'll get to that in a minute. But people do run in and out of Mary and Joe's pretty quickly. Some kid needs swim goggles, and I've used that parking lot a lot to go to Mary and Joe's, and it's difficult at times to get back out of that parking lot for the same reasons we're already talking about. The traffic just doesn't let you into the flow.
And I would also say that green zones there could be used by Max's Liquor and some of those other places for, you could. It isn't the same as parking on the other side of Solano, but at least it is a potential spot that you could park, cross Solano, get what you're getting, and then move on.
Are you saying leave the one or put them all?
I would leave at least one, and if not all. I know that the Y had written a letter and was worried about losing parking, but I love the Y. I'm a Y member, but I'm not sure we should be as concerned about parking for the Y as we are for parking for commercial businesses. I mean, I think the Y will keep having people come who walk there. And
I'm a little confused. The Y is one block over on Kane Street.
But people park between San Pablo and Kane's, and we're taking out 4 spaces there.
Right.
So that's why I'm suggesting if we don't take these out but make them 90-minute parking, I think it'll just benefit the whole area, not just the Y, but the whole area. And some people do go to the Y that really can't walk there. There are a lot of seniors or a lot of somewhat mobility challenged people, so I see no reason to make these green since we're putting in the other green.
Well, like I say, I think I would still keep at least one green space there.
Let's keep the one.
Okay.
We could send this back to traffic and safety. They could hash this out.
I'd like us to make at least a general decision tonight.
Okay.
This has been
Just saying.
twice a traffic and safety this go-round, years before.
I only want to say one more thing, and then I'll be quiet. I think there's an implicit assumption being made by the business owners, which occurs to me is not a very good assumption. That is, you seem to be implicitly assuming that you have no customers coming from the now south on San Pablo heading north and getting frustrated because they can't get to your businesses because the traffic's always blocked there. And maybe that's enough to make them, go somewhere else. So I think that there would be some advantages to have this intersection clear for those businesses on the north side, so your customers from the south can get there more easily.
Okay, do we have any other thoughts? And if not, can we get a motion here? Mr. Silva, I will let you make one comment. Mr. Silva, I said I would let you make one comment. So come on up. No, do it from up here.
Forgive my frustration, but the arrogance to tell the business owners what they need or that they'll benefit from bus customers. I own a custom stained glass shop. They're not coming on the bus with their stained glass panel. The parking spots across the street, I'm not going to be carrying large sheets of glass across the street. The parking, and we're not even discussing the visual impact, the fact of having a diesel bus every 5 minutes. We're talking about a minute to 2 minutes of a commute that we're delaying. And you're talking about livelihoods, our businesses that are going to be impacted every 5 minutes, as opposed to someone on a bus who's delayed by 1 minute. You're missing the point. It's not about the parking. Yes, parking is important, but it's also about the general impact and the impact on these businesses. And it's not just something, oh, we'll paint it green, or we'll paint it yellow, or we'll have a loading zone. Loading zone no one can park in, period, unless they're unloading. Loading zone is a really bad idea. 20-minute parking, we can load and unload, and customers can use it. Utilize better. Don't be so arrogant as to tell the business people who are there 10 to 12 hours a day that you know their business better than they do. A bus stop's not going to help.
Thank you.
If I could just address that really quickly. No, I did not intend to mean that the bus riders would necessarily increase the patronage of your particular business. And I do believe there will be a green zone that's a little bit farther from your business than it is now, but there still will be a green zone. It won't be right in front of your business.
Okay, are we ready for a motion? And would somebody like to make it?
Sure, I'll move item 11-1, AC Transit encroachment, to allow AC Transit encroachment permit for bus stop relocation at the intersection of San Pablo Avenue and Solano Avenue and Solano Avenue and Canes.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, I need to stipulate that this is resolution number 2018-45.
And I'll second.
And before we go any further, would you like us to clarify green zone on the south side, or do you care? Michael, would you like to amend that to leave in or take out that green zone, excluding the one spot that's already there?
Do you want to do it? I think my understanding of the conversation was we want to, on the south side, basically leave the 20-minute green zone as it is and add more parking, but not 20-minute parking.
Right, 90-minute parking.
Take it away.
That's it? No, I think you made the motion. I think we're done.
Yeah.
You okay with that?
And yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, could you read the motion, please?
So for AC Transit to approve AC Transit encroachment permit for bus stop relocation at the intersection of San Pablo Avenue and Solano Avenue and Canes Avenue per resolution number 2018-45, and also leaving one green zone space on the south side and adding the rest as 90-minute zones.
Okay, does that work for staff? Okay, poll the council, please.
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Pilch?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nason?
Yes.
Mayor McQuay?
Yes, and the motion carries. Okay. Okay, with permission of staff, I'd like to flip 11.2 and 11.3. Is that possible? Nicole, can I switch those two? Okay, so,
Sorry.
that's okay.
I'm curious as to why the flip.
Because we do have staff here for 11.3.
Ah.
And let them go home at only a less than reasonable hour,
Okay, very good.
assuming they're watching. Assuming.
Shall I introduce this item then?
Yes, please.
Okay, so there isn't really a staff report to this item. We together with staff and I created an item out of my memo, and I think it's the memo is pretty clear. I've received a couple of inquiries, and they were from people that I'm known to be affiliated with Albany Strollers and Rollers, but these folks were not known to me previous to their inquiries. I don't know whether they're Strollers, Rollers, or members or not, but they did point out something that I think is an increasing problem, which is the cars blocking sidewalks due to parking in a driveway that's too short. And, the chief is here, great. He said he would be. And so the police department has been enforcing this on a case-by-case basis and a complaint basis, but does not always enforce it in full when the case is a car parked in a driveway that is too short. So I would love for the council to take some action, but that could be direction to the police department, or it could be referral back to staff for further information, because there isn't really any staff research here, or referral back to the Traffic and Safety Commission. If staff has any preference, it'd be good to know that as well.
Chief, would you like to come up and speak to this?
Sorry, I was a few seconds late there. The flip in the agenda threw me for a loop.
Sorry about that.
There's about a 15-second delay on watching this on the television. Okay, so Councilmember Pilch and I have had some discussion about this, and the way he portrays it is accurate, that we do enforce on a case-by-case basis, but generally speaking, because of the design, the engineering of some of the driveways in town, we have over time found ourselves with this practice of not proactively going out and enforcing this, and the issues that are raised in the memo from Councilmember Pilch do exist. It does force people to go into the street when the sidewalk is blocked. What I've expressed to him is that we can begin enforcing this with some direction from council. It's not that hard to do. It's because it's been such a long-standing practice, and this has been the practice since I came to work here in 1988. So it's a long-standing practice. I don't know its origin, but nevertheless we've inherited it, and there's interest in seeing it changed. We can pretty easily accomplish the change without doing it in a heavy-handed manner or anything of that sort. Of course, the first time someone gets a ticket, they're liable to think it's being heavy-handed, but there's a method of appealing that sort of thing. And typically when we change an enforcement pattern like this, we roll it out with a period of kind of an educational aspect. I think I may have explained this to this council in the past for other issues. There's kind of an educational period when we let people know that the practice is changing, and that can be followed by a warning period, which can then be followed by a citation period on into the future. And we can track warnings by vehicle or location, that sort of thing. That's pretty easy to do. So again, kind of in summation, what I had told Councilmember Pilch is clear direction from council, and it's very easy for us to act on that, to change this practice.
A question, could the easy rollout of the enforcement include warnings as well? That, you know, this is a warning that we're enforcing this more now, and next time it'll be a ticket, that sort of thing? Yes,
that's typically our enforcement posture when we're making a change over a long-standing practice like this, or if a new ordinance comes into play, there's a warning period. It's usually a month or more. And again, we track who gets the warnings. So when it is, when we enter into a phase where we are enforcing and writing tickets, there's the ability to look back and see whether or not a particular vehicle has received a warning in the past. So,
I was curious, are these usually, are the worst offenders in this people that just do this all the time, or is it more likely that you're finding occasionally somebody blocks a sidewalk, but it doesn't happen on a regular basis? I mean, are some of these cars mobile? I mean, you know, I have no idea. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of reasons why people are pulling out on the sidewalk. You know, they don't have enough space, basically, but are they doing it every night, or are they just leaving the car there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week?
So I haven't undertaken a great study of this. A lot of it's anecdotal based on my own experience and what my staff has told me. And that is that where it happens, it tends to happen all the time. So someone who is now comfortable parking in their driveway, even though that car blocks the sidewalk, they tend to do that over and over. They're not experiencing any enforcement of the violation, and so they tend to do that as a matter of regularity, I guess you would say.
Okay. So it seems like those are the worst problems, and if you went after the folks that just did it all the time, there'd have to be some amount of improvement.
There would be. We don't like to characterize it as we're going after people.
Well,
but
you start to warn people, and
sure, because this is related to the design of the driveways in front of the home. It changes. The different neighborhoods have varying degrees of this kind of activity. So some neighborhoods have none, and others have a lot of it.
Does this tend to happen on driveways that are flat or steep, like Washington Street, for example? I mean, is it people, say, who have, you know, the driveway's like steeply downhill, and, I mean, is there certain neighborhoods, in your casual empiricism, is there certain neighborhoods or types of driveways that are more of a problem than others?
Well, it's the short driveways. My driveway in Albany was one of the steep ones, and if I parked my vehicle in the driveway, the back bumper probably covered about half of the sidewalk. So it's not necessarily related to it's primarily, it's just the depth. I mean, we have driveways in this town that are probably less than 6 feet in some areas.
People technically are required to keep their garage a garage, so they could be parking in their garage. Yes, Jeff?
We don't enforce that, so
yeah,
I can't speak to that.
Well, my concern is unintended consequences. So if they're not parking illegally in their driveway, where are they going to park? Is there room on the street for them to park, or where they can just park up on the sidewalk like they do on Pierce Street, or?
Well, there's two different points that you raise. One is, where do the cars go? Presumably in the garage or elsewhere on the street, would be my answer to the first part. And then the second one is, it's worth noting that if we're going to address blocking the sidewalk, we have other areas of town where the sidewalk is daily blocked by cars that are not perpendicular to the sidewalk. They're simply parking on the sidewalk. Gateview today, I drove down Gateview, and every single car on Gateview was parked on the sidewalk. Every single car on Gateview was parked on the sidewalk, and that included a car that was parked on the sidewalk and a car right next to it that was parked perpendicular, blocking the sidewalk on the driveway. And so if we're going to do this, I think we can be very judicious in how we do it. It's important that council understand there's a little nuance to how we do that when you have someone blocking the sidewalk parked next to someone blocking the sidewalk, and we cite one and we don't cite the other. So there are other people that are liable to get caught in that enforcement practice when we start doing that may raise an objection. But we have an appeals process for parking citations, and philosophically, you're asking us to keep the sidewalks clear.
Are you okay with this? I mean, do you want hard and fast rules from us, or do you want discretion? You can live with the discretion.
I think our staff is pretty good at using their discretion, but I think it's good to have this direction because it's a change in a long-standing practice. It's good to be able to know that the council supports this enforcement. That's kind of where I'm coming from. So I feel confident we can do it. It's a real mixed bag, kind of from an engineering standpoint out there. We have sidewalks that are blocked with telephone poles. We have sidewalks that have fire hydrants right in the middle of them. We have quite a mix of challenges for people trying to use the sidewalks in town. But this is a violation of the vehicle code that we have the tools to address it with, and it'll probably raise other issues down the road. But I don't know that any amount of study is going to change the fundamental premise that the sidewalk is blocked by someone that doesn't need to block the sidewalk, and it's forcing pedestrians and children into the street.
And wheelchairs.
And wheelchairs, like pedestrian to me.
So are you focusing in this conversation mainly on perpendicular parkers? Or are all people on the sidewalk blocking the sidewalk, whether they're perpendicular, whether they're just parked on the sidewalk because that's where they're parked?
It's the same violation. The issue is perpendicular parking is the issue that I think is on the agenda. I'm basically advising council that it's not that simple, but I think we can do it, giving consideration to the fact that for example on Washington there's kind of a process that's going on to deal with their specific parking issues there. And the fact that we, would probably do this kind of nudging people along. It's not the sort of thing where we're going to start handing out tickets tomorrow. It would probably be a process that has a big educational component to it to try to get people to look at their other options. And some of the parking that's happening this way doesn't need to be happening this way. And when I say that, I don't mean the perpendicular parking. Some of the on-curb parking that's happening, really, I've seen it in areas where it's happening where I can't understand why it's happening. There may be a reason, but it's probably not good enough to warrant blocking the sidewalk.
Well, it seems to me a soft beginning to this of starting out with warnings, and then also having some sense of, if some cars blocking, is pulled onto the sidewalk on Gateway, that seems to me different than if they're doing that on Washington, if for no other reason Gateway is a dead end. And there's probably less traffic going up and down. It's just that the residents on that street. But Washington is a thoroughfare, essentially, that has probably way too much traffic. So the danger is even greater. But starting this out, warning, and particularly warning the people that are just doing it all the time, constantly blocking the sidewalk, the ones you want to go after. So
we still have public comment to do, right?
Yeah, we're just still in our little part. Don't worry, haven't forgotten them. Are there other questions? Okay, I think we will open it to public comment, and then probably have some more comments and questions from us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment, Preston?
Thank you, Council. Speaking again for strollers and rollers, very excited this is on the agenda. When it did its census, sidewalk census in 2010, I think it is now, sidewalk parking was sort of co-equal, if I recall correctly, with sidewalk damage in terms of preventing passability. And yet it was really the simpler one to solve of the two. Obviously, people in Albany want their sidewalks in good shape and clear because they passed Measure P1 with more votes than any measure in Albany's history. So I would encourage you to look at that and noting that that is the public's interest is being able to use its sidewalks. You might consider a criteria of just a 4-foot clear passage, because I know from that survey, participating in that census, that in some parts of the city, while motorists park on the sidewalk, there's still a 4-foot clear passage. And so strollers and rollers isn't necessarily interested in just getting those motor vehicles off the sidewalk just on principle. It's really an issue of people using the sidewalk not having to divert into the street or just not being able to go there at all. Yeah, a poster car for this policy change that you're considering is it's parked in a driveway on the north side of Washington between Evelyn and Masonic. It's a Mercedes sedan. It's got 2 flat tires. It's totally overgrown. The sidewalk is 5 feet wide there, and it's blocking about, 2 3/4 feet. So it's not possible to go through there with a wheelchair. Obviously, it's been there forever. It's in poor repair. Like I say, it's overgrown, although it looks like the owner has cut back the vegetation in the last week or so. But that's the kind of thing that really should not be going on. There's just no reason for that at all. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Alan?
Alan Maris, thank you very much for considering this issue. When I was on the city council, we were concerned about this as well. And you see, you're still considering it, so I apologize for not getting this done sooner. I used to take a little sign and put it on the windshield wiper of a car. Please move your car. You forced my grandmother in her wheelchair out into the street. Didn't seem to change things, but mothers in wheelchairs, mothers with strollers, old people in wheelchairs, this really inconveniences them. I haven't heard of any accidents with that. I think maybe we're generally a safe enough city, so there's not a lot of traffic in these areas that we're forcing people out into the street, but it just doesn't seem right. So thank you very much for considering this and making an effort to make our sidewalks safer.
Thank you. Okay, bring it back to council. Actually, before I do, Craig, I have a question for you. The agenda topic is cars blocking the sidewalk perpendicularly. Does that mean that's the only part of this we can actually give direction on, or can we broaden it to cars blocking the sidewalks, period?
The actual agenda wording is Councilmember Pilch memo on vehicles blocking sidewalks. I think you have some latitude to
great.
talk
Thank
about different ways that sidewalks get blocked.
Okay. Okay. Come on up.
There's a point I feel compelled to make, and that is that in some areas, I was thinking, for example, of Gateview, if we begin enforcing the, not necessarily just perpendicularly cars parking blocking the sidewalks, but cars that are up on the sidewalk blocking the passage, what that may necessitate is we may need to talk to, well, what we may need to do is it may involve putting in some red zones because if you force everyone to park legally in the street, you may block the street, and I might have a problem with the fire chief over that.
Mm-hmm.
So we may, as we look at this, that may affect kind of how we roll out enforcement in certain areas as well. If we suddenly force everyone to park legally on the street, and now we have a very narrow space to get through, we may have to go through the process of getting some red zones installed.
It seems like, though, this is a good way to get to that point. As you're looking at it, oh, wait, this isn't going to work, and then we go from there.
Yeah, as long as we approach it with that in mind, that we want to make sure that it's measured in how we go about this. It's been a long time since it's been enforced, so.
So what type of action do we need? Do we need a motion to give direction?
I would be happy to make a motion.
Okay.
First, I'd like to say thank you, Nick, for bringing this forward and making sure that we could address it. And I would move that we give direction to the staff, and in particular to the police department, to begin enforcing the vehicle code prohibition on perpendicular parking in driveways and angled. I've seen the guy right across from the police department who parks at an angle across the sidewalk, but essentially perpendicular parking that blocks use of the sidewalk. And I'm going to suggest that we leave the issue of sidewalk parking on Gateview and similar streets for another day.
Could I add, I guess would be essentially an amendment, that this be done in a soft manner?
In a soft manner, beginning with warnings.
That this rollout, and perhaps that might include not just warnings on cars, but also just an announcement in city publications that a change is coming. We're going to start enforcing this and get the word out this way. Because, when you don't enforce something for a long time and then all of a sudden you start enforcing it, people are very upset by that. So, it's something we need to do, but let's soften the blow a bit and get people on board.
Absolutely, and we will be very careful in how that message is framed so that there's an understanding as to why this is occurring.
Mm-hmm.
So with that amendment, I'd be happy to second this.
Very good.
Okay.
Can we have that motion read back, please?
To give direction to staff to begin enforcing in a soft manner the vehicle code for vehicle blocking sidewalk perpendicularly.
Okay, Chief, do you want to say something?
Just a little bit.
Sure.
The vehicle code violation is blocking the sidewalk. It makes no reference to perpendicularly.
Mm-hmm.
So the wording of the motion should reflect that, I guess you would say. Does that make sense? The violation isn't blocking the sidewalk perpendicularly. The violation is blocking the sidewalk. You want us to enforce that for vehicles that are doing that perpendicularly.
Well,
Make sense?
Well, it makes sense, but I don't agree with that idea, not with what you're saying.
Okay.
the purpose is to enable people to get through the city on the sidewalks, whether they're roller skating or walking or in a wheelchair or stroller or whatever. There's no difference to the person in the wheelchair if the car is perpendicular or horizontal. If they can't get by, they can't get by. So I don't particularly like the idea of saying we're only going to enforce the perpendicular. I think the goal is to clear the sidewalks. So I think that's important.
I agree that is the goal, but I think that it's a different issue where the streets, the two sidewalks and the street taken together are just not really wide enough to serve the normal purposes of having cars parked on either side along the curb and having a clear sidewalk. You just have such narrowness. You have to look at that, as we did a couple of meetings ago at very great length. I think you really have to look at those issues on a street-by-street basis and find the solution.
But I think that's kind of what you were saying when you were using Gateview as a model, saying that we may come to realize that that street is going to need more attention. Am I understanding that's kind of what you were saying?
If the direction from council is to enforce the code without regard to how the car is parked, and just to enforce the law that says you cannot block the sidewalk, then yes. A different approach would be, perpendicular parking, blocking the sidewalk is low-hanging fruit. And we start there and, look at other areas. Because again, we have some sidewalks that are probably 2 feet wide when they're not blocked. So there's a real challenge in kind of uniformly applying it, because areas like Gateview are a challenge. But I feel confident that we can begin enforcing, even if it's only the perpendicular blockages, and maybe draw attention to some of these other ones and start getting them in the queue for trying to fix those other issues as well, so it frees up those sidewalks over time as well.
Okay, that makes sense. Sort of, yeah.
So now I'm a little confused, but I think, so it's our sense tonight that we're going to at least start on this idea of the perpendicular issues first. And while the ultimate goal is to get the sidewalks free of cars, whether they're parallel or perpendicular or however the blockage is, it may be a little more than we can chew at this point if we take it all on right now. So why don't we just take on the perpendicular part, which has been an issue for a long time, and this will get the ball rolling. Is that our sense of it all?
Yeah. I think so. And are you comfortable with that? Okay.
Yeah.
Is that what our motion says?
Yeah, can you read the motion one more time?
Fewer words, hopefully.
Taking out the enforcing vehicle code piece?
Just read the whole motion.
Why don't you read it as it is right now, and we'll see if we need to change it.
So what Vice Mayor Nason's motion is to give direction to staff to begin enforcing the vehicle code for vehicle blocking sidewalk perpendicularly.
No, take out
Okay, so
perpendicularly.
what he was saying is that it makes it, the way the motion reads, it sounds as though I'm specifying a vehicle code that prohibits parking perpendicularly, and that's not correct. It's a broader. So how about if we reword it like this? Direct staff to begin a soft rollout and public information campaign to inform people that the police department will begin enforcing enforcing against vehicles parked perpendicularly in such a manner as to violate, or say perpendicular, say parked in driveways in such a manner as to block the sidewalk.
Okay, as I understand it, I second that, so
So,
if you need a second.
okay, so we have a motion and a second, but what are we enforcing? We're not enforcing the vehicle code, we're enforcing.
We are enforcing the vehicle code.
Enforcing a section of the vehicle code, and that's fine.
So yes, we would be enforcing the vehicle code. And actually, as Vice Mayor Nason was presenting her motion, I was nodding my head because we need to actually take out the perpendicular part, because if the direction is just focus on the ones that are perpendicular, then they can simply just park their car sideways and do the same thing, but we're not enforcing that. So I think the motion as it was just presented works, and I think it's a good start.
Although it says perpendicular in there, right?
The motion no longer says perpendicular.
You said, I thought you said it at the very end. Could you reread the motion then? I'm sorry. I thought you said it at the end.
So to direct staff to do a software out and public information campaign that police department will begin enforcing against vehicle parking and driveway to block, in such a manner that blocks the sidewalk.
Okay, that works for your staff?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any poll the council?
Confidence made here.
I'm sorry?
I said I'm ready.
Okay. Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Pilch?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nason?
Yes.
Mayor McQuaid?
Yes, and the motion carries. Okay. Thank you. Okay, now we'll go back to 11-2, voluntary campaign finance. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes.
Right, I always look the wrong way.
Good evening. The 2017-2019 City Council Strategic Plan includes the strategy of establishing a voluntary campaign finance limit for city elections with the interest in working towards achieving the goal to facilitate government accountability. Mayor McQuaid submitted a summary of recent candidate campaign expenditures, as well as a recommendation to set the voluntary campaign finance limit at $5,500. This limit would apply to both contributions and expenditures, but would exclude the optional campaign statement fee. Pending council's action tonight, staff will include the voluntary campaign finance limit form as part of the nomination packet for the November 2018 election for city elective offices. Staff will also inform the Albany Unified School District Board of Education on council's action to see if the Board of Education wish to adopt a similar voluntary limit. And I will turn it over to Mayor McQuaid.
Are there any
I have a question.
questions? Okay.
Yeah, are these expenditures, are you counting people's repayment of people's loans to themselves as part of the expenditures?
Well, maybe you could weigh in on this. I just looked on the website and got the totals.
It would depend on what each Form 460 entailed in terms of loans and expenditures. You'd have to go through each one.
Yeah, I think there may be some double counting here because, does that sound right to you? At least with a couple of these, I know that people made substantial loans to their own campaigns, and the repayment of the loan should not be considered a campaign expenditure, even though it does show up on the FPPC forms as an expenditure.
Were you looking at the, I don't know what sheet you were looking at. Were you looking at the expense sheet or?
I was looking at whatever was on the website. And it's just a summary of,
It's a total year-to-date expenditure.
I don't know if I can get the website.
I can tell you that the number that is probably mine is probably accurate.
Of actual expenditures. I was actually thinking of a different one, but that's okay. I was thinking of the...
Well, the concept we want is money actually spent, with the exception of the ballot statement on, printing and setting up a website, all that stuff. That's how I would define the expenditures. It's money you really expended. That's
Right.
I'm surprised that there's probably a line on the Form 460 that's the number we want. I don't know if we need to specify that line.
But it doesn't really matter anyway. I'm just saying, if those numbers, of course, we don't want it to include repayment of people's loans to themselves, because that's not really an expenditure. That would be double counting the same money. Anyway, it all seems fine. It seems fine. It's voluntary. It's a reasonable number. My only concern would be any impact on challengers to incumbents, that generally challengers need to raise and spend more to make themselves known. But if it's voluntary, it's not, it doesn't seem problematical.
I was curious as to how you came up with that number. Was it 5,500?
Well, I looked at the, oh, I'm sorry.
Well, could it be 6,000? Could it be 4,000? Could it be?
It could be whatever we want.
Yeah, we could, there's no magic about that number particularly.
No, I just kind of looked at like the average, kind of looked at all the averages, and that was kind of the average of the averages, kind of, without doing real definite math.
Yeah.
Did you consider contribution limits as well, or
Yes, it's
just
both. It's as it reads. It is
I mean, limits of individual contributions.
Oh, you mean how much?
Yeah.
No, I just took a total.
Was there a reason for that?
No.
Okay.
It seems, well, I have some comments, but perhaps somebody in the audience would like to.
Well, are there any other questions? Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, public comment?
Alan Maris, I think this is a good start, but I have some comments on what might be done to improve our election process. First of all, thank you for serving the residents of Albany, all of you. And thank you for considering this campaign finance agenda item. State and federal campaign finance is a mess. And I'm a little concerned we're headed that way. Albany has an opportunity at the local level to avoid this situation. The Social and Economic Justice Commission has shown concern in the past about creating diversity and inclusionary governance and politics in Albany. And that would be to include people of low income, as well as different ethnic and racial groups to be better represented in our governing bodies. The city of Albany wants us, and potentially good candidates have been discouraged by campaign costs. And I think you heard from one of them at your last workshop last spring. A school board candidate. The city of Albany once subsidized the county registration fee. I paid about $300 for the county registration fee in 2002. And for that fee, it included the campaign statement in the county election information booklet. That statement is probably the most effective campaign statement available to voters. When I vote, I stack all the glossy candidate statements that that land on my porch and tend to vote for the candidate with the shortest stack. Money appears to buy too much influence. I suggest that the City of Albany restore the Alameda campaign registration fee subsidy to reduce the current fee from $1,000 to, say, under $500. Provide guidelines for reasonable campaign costs. I suggested $3,000 to $5,000, which seems to fit in within what has been spent in the last few elections. And I think your figure is reasonably close to what I'm suggesting there. It's a good start anyway. In 2002, I received $1,100 in campaign donations and donated $150 excess to the Albany Education Fund. Other candidates spent less than $2,000, and that's kind of what some of your candidates are spending now. A few years later, some candidates spent about $20,000 for their candidacy, and they received a lot of outside campaign financing. Timely reporting of campaign financing is also important. In the interest of transparency, voters should know the cost of a campaign before they vote. FPPC, I think, allows you to report your file well after the election.
No.
No? They used to. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment? Okay, bring it back to council for final thoughts.
Well, I agree that it's the right direction to go, but I worry that it's not fast enough. I think contribution limits and campaign limits are a good thing. We live in a crazy country where someone decided way back when to label corporations as people. And people could then start contributing to people. Could then, quote unquote, could start contributing to campaigns. And then someone was able to convince some judges that, if you restricted, the funds that people could spend on a campaign, that was a restriction of free speech somehow. And we have Citizens United, and the whole thing is a freaking mess. And we have campaigns that last for years, literally years, because people can spend all this money. So yeah, let's go down this road. Let's have limits. I was around when this was discussed. When we had campaign limits and they were abolished by a previous council. And it was, the arguments were by the city attorney, I think at that time, is that he was concerned about legal challenges, or he raised the specter of legal challenges. There also was the argument made that, the other side, will be able to spend lots of money, then we should be able to, the other side being some big corporate entity. Anyway, I almost wanted to vote no for this because I want us to do more faster, but I think that would not show my desire to move forward in this direction. So yes, by all means, let's do this and keep on doing more.
Rochelle, do you have any thoughts?
I think I already said my thoughts.
Okay.
I think it's basically a good thing. I think if I were to tinker, I would probably raise this number as opposed to lower it closer to that $6,000 figure, just because between 2012 and 2016 things did go up. Whether this is discouraging people, I don't know. If there, in an ideal world, we would have publicly funded campaigns, and I don't think Albany's in a place to be able to do that, particularly if 7 or 8 people decide to run. What's that number? But one thought I had is that in a very low number for a campaign requirement or maximum that you could spend automatically in favors incumbents. And if you want to have just anybody be able to run or have some parity, you know, if you're not an incumbent and you're coming out of left field, you may need to spend more. You know, you could also, there's a lot of issues here, so I'm not quite sure, but I think I support this essentially. I think I would raise it to at least 6,000 or more to allow for some of the added expenses that go on in campaigns. If you're collecting your 6,000 in small contributions, then that doesn't necessarily mean that you yourself are rich. That just means you're getting a lot of support in small contributions. So anyway, those are my mixed feelings at 10:30 at night.
And speaking of 10:30 at night, I'll move we continue until 10:45.
May I?
I'll second that.
And we'll take consensus, good?
Yeah.
Okay, Michael, your thoughts?
I have no thoughts. Let's just vote.
It's late.
Okay, can we get a motion? Okay, I'll make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2018-48, adopting a voluntary campaign finance limit.
Second.
Could I make a friendly amendment to raise it to $6,000?
You may do that. What is it now, 55?
Yeah, that's only $500 more than what it is.
Yeah, well, I think it would help. I mean, every year every 4 years or so, or every 2 years, it's going to cost a bit more to run a campaign.
Did you second? Will you second the 6,000? Did you second?
I'll second the 6,000.
Okay, so we've got, I feel like I'm gambling or something. We've got 6,000 on the, it's like I'm an auctioneer.
Do I hear 650? Do I hear 7?
Exactly, we're done. Would you poll the council, please?
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Pilch?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nason?
Yes.
Mayor McQuay?
Yes, and the motion carries. Okay, other business, announcement of events, future agenda items.
You know what, a future agenda item that I'd like to suggest that we consider, and it was kind of sparked by this discussion of the parking at San Pablo and Solano, and that is whether commuter bike parking is something that we might be able to offer. I do believe a lot of parking in that area is bus commuters who park all day on residential streets, and people shouldn't have to park to, physically able people should not have to drive to the Y. That just seems almost like a contradiction in terms. And there's a lot of space that is unused. There's a lot right across from the Y. The Albany Theater is not utilized much of the time, or not fully utilized. These aren't even maintained parking lots. There might be opportunities, and I'm not talking about eminent domain, God forbid, or, necessarily building a municipal parking ramp, but if we could even offer something more secure than an outdoor bike rack,
Okay, we could add that to the agenda
Okay,
before
thanks.
we discuss it here.
Okay.
Is there anything else? Okay, we are adjourning our meeting this evening in memory of Donald Lee McCone, who passed away February 2nd, 2018 at age 85. He moved to Albany at the age of 12 and attended Albany High School. Upon graduating in 1951, he joined the military, serving in the U.S. Air Force as a valued and respected crew chief. In 1955, he returned to Albany, where he owned a highly successful service station and was a trusted mechanic. He eventually moved to Twain Harte. Donald enjoyed outdoor activities and especially spending time with his family and large group of friends. He was an avid 49er fan and was honored by the team as one of the oldest season ticket holders. So let's take a moment to remember him. And with that, we are adjourned. Our next meeting is May 7th.